Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 highly talented, clever, individual players of this game. And thence again, they're going to show their humorous invention, their verbal dexterity, and their creative ingenuity as they speak on the subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those 4 individuals are Paul Merton, Julian Clary, Tony Hawks, and Clement Freud. Please welcome all 4 of them. Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who's going to help me keep the score and blow her whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from Foy, in that wonderful, beautiful county of Cornwall. And we are part of the Daphne du Maurier Festival here in this tented village in Cornwall. And we start this week with Clement Freud, and who better, Clement? The subject is, oh, how apt, how to make a Cornish pasty. Tell us something about that, Clement, in this game, starting now.
You make a Cornish pasty with pastry, gravy, meat, onion, and potatoes.
Paula's challenge.
Well, I don't know why, but it's clearly deviation. That's not the traditional Cornish pasty recipe at all.
I think when a Cornish audience responds en masse like that, it must be deviation. I have a suspicion it was the word gravy that threw you. Was that? Right there, that's the deviation. And you have a point, of course, for a correct challenge, Paul. You take over the subject. You have 54 seconds available. How to make a Cornish pasty. Starting now.
Well, it's very much as Clement said, apart from the gravy. What you do is, once you put all the ingredients together, you then sort of fold the pastry over, get a little crinkle.
Clement Freud challenge.
You don't.
Well, that could be his Cornish pasty.
Well, mine was my Cornish pasty.
So I think that was an incorrect challenge. You still have 45 seconds. I know you don't want it. And another point, of course, Paul, how to make a Cornish pasty starting now.
Put the oven on. That's always very important because the heat source is something that's going to make the pasty actually bake. So once you've got your dish in front of you, you pick it up. If you've got gloves which are impervious to heat, some that are made out of asbestos would probably be wrong because that's been shown to be a health hazard. So instead, get something that has a thick cloth to it, then pick up the Cornish.
Clement challenge.
We have picked up.
Oh.
Yes, you picked up. So, Clement, a correct challenge. You get a point for that, of course. 25 seconds are still available. Tell us more about how to make a Cornish pasty starting now.
I think you would be foolish to make a Cornish pasty when everyone should make lots of Cornish pasties. While you are at it, whether you use gravy or not...
Tony challenge.
You shouldn't make a Cornish pasty when you're at it. It's just stupid. It's a waste of, concentrate on one thing at a time.
Yes. Tony, we give you a bonus point for that. Clement was interrupted, so he gets a point for that. He keeps the subject. 14 seconds. How to make a Cornish pasty, Clement, starting now.
There are people who say...
Paul challenge.
Well, it is repetition of gravy. He said gravy before.
No,
And then Tony buzzed, but he said gravy twice.
he did say gravy twice.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, you can't. We've never allowed retrospective challenges.
You know what I always do? I always try to be as fair as possible. I always try to balance everything out, and I give you the benefit of the doubt to you, Clement. 13 seconds. How to make a Cornish pasty starting now.
Balancing a Cornish pasty is a very difficult thing to do. You have to go to a school where balance is taught between pottery and history and get a leek.
Clement Freud was speaking as the whistle went, and whoever's speaking in this game when the whistle goes gains an extra point, so he's naturally got a lead ahead of Paul Merton and Tony Hawks and Julian Clary in that order. And Tony Hawks, will you take the next round? The subject is shells. Tell us something about shells in just a minute, starting now.
They say if you hold a shell up to your ear, you can hear the sea. But this is nearly always the case because you are standing on a beach at the time. which is where shells are predominantly found. Earlier today, here in Cornwall, the lovely village of Foy, I walked along the harbour area, possibly the beach. I don't know what you call...
Julian challenge.
You repeated beach.
You did repeat beach.
I repeated.
So, Julian, you've got in. We're going to hear from you. And there are 38 seconds to tell us something about shells starting now.
It's all very well, people going on about how pretty shells are and how they hold them to their ears and everything, but what they don't realise is those shells are actually creatures' homes. At one time, that's where they live, and somehow they've been ripped out away from their mother's breast, and that shell is then being used for decorative purposes. And I think it's awful. Whenever I look at a shell, I see the organic whole, and I imagine the little thing wiggling away in there, thinking, oh, well, I'll just do some tidying, maybe a bit of hoovering. Why don't I rearrange the furniture inside my shell?
Well, Julian went for a considerable time on that and did very well, and also, speaking as a whistle, went gained that extra point. And he's equal with Paul Merton in second place, just behind our leader, Clement Freud. And Julian, it's also your turn to begin. The subject is the Celts. Tell us something about the Celts in this game, starting now.
The Celts ate a lot of shellfish, which was what made them very strong and boisterous, and Lord, they liked a good ruck. But there aren't many of them around nowadays. They've been pushed round to the outsides of the country, but they've still got their old funny ways. The Celts like to worship trees, and many an evening I've spent with my arms round a sapling. Celts generally predominate in Cornwall, of course, and Ireland and Scotland, and you can tell what they look like from the shape of their heads. Quite large.
Paul challenge.
You can tell what they look like by the shape of their heads.
That's what he said.
That's nonsense.
I think so. You can't always tell a Celt by the shape of the head.
Well,
no.
yeah, exactly. And you can,
They're all different.
Exactly.
I mean,
No, what I'm saying is, you can
Yes.
tell what they look like. You can tell
By
what
looking at them.
What the face is.
I mean, that's a revelation to me.
No, but if you can't look at their face and you come up behind them and just feel their heads, you can see what they look like.
Well, excuse me, I'm not going to go around feeling the back of the heads of Celts just to please you.
Well, it wouldn't do for us all to be the same, would it?
Now, I think I have to give the benefit of the doubt on this occasion to Paul Merton. So, Paul, you have a point and the subject, and 25 seconds, the Celts, starting now.
I come from Irish stock. My grandfather I never met. My mother's father, he was a fisherman. I think his name was Peter, and he was lost at sea, and so, unfortunately, we never sort of came across him. It's a great shame, because I wonder what he would have been like. He was quite tall, apparently, and my cousin...
Tony challenged.
Well, I was going to get him on deviation because he was only talking about one Celt, and the subject is Celts.
Well, it doesn't matter. If the subject's Celts, you can still talk about one Celt.
Yes, so I've decided to withdraw my challenge. I
And
felt
he keeps the
inspired,
subject.
and I wasn't.
That's no.
Okay.
It's lovely to have you keen.
Thank you.
And 9 seconds available for you, Paul, starting now.
Whenever he went out towards the sea, he had a Cornish pasty sticking in his pocket, because there was an old saying in them days.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of old.
When?
Heard old before.
Ah, that would be the repetition aspect then.
Yes.
I don't remember saying old before, Nicholas, and you don't, but look on your
No, I
face.
don't.
So, you know.
Paul, you had the benefit of the doubt. Clement had it last time. You got it this time. So that's 2 seconds on the Celts with you starting now.
If you go to Edinburgh...
Clement challenge.
Repetition of if.
Not this round.
Oh, yes.
No.
You had the benefit last time.
He hasn't said if in this round.
No.
No. So, Paul,
about a bit of benefit?
another point. 1 second. The Celts starting now.
Wales.
So, Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, with other points in that round, gained the extra point for speaking and is now moved forward. He's now in the lead ahead of Clement Freud, then Julian, Clary, and then Tony Hawkes. And, Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject here now is stealing the show. 60 seconds are available. Tell us something about it, starting now.
It's virtually impossible to steal the show when you're playing just a minute, because everybody is so good. They all have their individual roles to play, and I'm convinced that if they listen to me praising them, they're going to impress me, and they're not going to interrupt me, and they're not...
Julian challenge.
hesitation and foibling around.
Foibling around?
They're not going to.
A repetition?
Yes, that's right. Well done, Julian. 45 seconds for you on stealing the show, Julian, starting now.
I once did a show called My Glittering Passage with a camp chorus girl in called Michael Dalton, who was notorious for stealing the show. We didn't realise this until we saw some photographs of the finale, and there we would be.
Tony.
You'll never know.
I'm sure you'll get the subject back shortly, and then you'll be able to finish it. But there was a hesitation.
There was a hesitation as he stumbled over the word. So, Tony, you had the subject of stealing the show, and there are 30 seconds starting now.
I intend to steal this show after it's been recorded. I'm going to get the cassettes, and I'm going to run off into the
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of going.
Yes. Welcome from Clement, 24 seconds, stealing the show, starting now.
If you took a very large laundry basket to the new Tate Gallery and put into it all the Matisses and Picassos, you could rightly be accused of stealing the show. That is the only thing at the moment in that gallery.
Julian challenge.
Well, they wouldn't all fit in a laundry basket.
Deviation, yes. I thought you were going to have a repetition. Right, so, Julian, you got back in again. Another point to you. 9 seconds stealing the show, starting now.
You could see in this photograph...
Paul challenge.
Repetition of gravy. Photograph. The photograph before.
Yeah, we did have the photograph before. 7 seconds for you, Paul, on stealing the show, starting now.
The one time I stole the show, I remember it very well, Hackney Empire, Julian Clary's production, and everybody loved me, whereas they booed him.
So Paul Merton was again speaking as the whistle went, again an extra point for doing so, and has increased his lead at the end of the round. And, Julian, it's your turn to begin. The subject is how to celebrate your birthday. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
It's my birthday next Saturday, as luck would have it, and I'm going to have a garden party in my friend Hector's place. So think of me at 9 o'clock with a Savoy shoved down my throat. We're going to have lots of bunting and maybe a little glass of pink champagne, and an awful lot of my friends will be in attendance.
Clement Freud challenge.
Friend.
Said friends.
It was friend.
A lot of my friends.
Friend and friends, then.
Sorry.
41 seconds, Julian. Incorrect challenge, another point. How to celebrate your birthday, starting now.
I'm a little bit worried about the queue for the bathroom, because Cleo Rockus is a close personal show business chum, and I don't want her to have to stand round next to the likes of Paul Merton. I don't know if you're coming or not. Have I invited you? Probably not.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of knots.
Yeah.
He's right. So, Paul, you have 25 seconds. Tell us something about how to celebrate your birthday, starting now.
Well, you've got to be careful on how you celebrate your birthday. If it's a big birthday, like your 40th, then you suppose you've got to have a really good drink, but you don't want to feel that terrible the next day, so you have to take it in moderation. For my particular birthday, the one between 39 and 41, I had a terrible party.
Tony challenged.
Repetition of 40.
No, he didn't say that. Between 39 and... Oh,
Yeah,
41,
40
yes.
and 41.
40
He said
and
40
41.
twice.
Well, listen. I love your enthusiasm and commitment, audience, but those are the rules of just a minute. So he did repeat the word 40. 9 seconds. How to celebrate your birthday, starting now.
A really good way to celebrate your birthday is to invite lots of people round to your house and give them cakes, maybe cups of tea, other things.
So, Tony Hawk speaking as a whistle went, then gained an extra point. He's now 1 ahead of Paul Merton and 2 ahead of Julian Clary and 2 or 3 ahead of Clement Freud. In that order, as we move forward with Paul to start, and the subject now is apathy. Tell us something about apathy in just a minute, starting now.
Well, it's a characteristic of the teenager, isn't it, to be apathetic, as I sit here in this marvellous tented auditorium with the rain paddling down on the roof, and those listeners who are in India and China will probably think, why is somebody frying bacon? Apathy is a terrible emotion when you've got it. It grips the soul. You sit around all day not doing anything. You can't find the energy to get up and turn the radio off when you hear drizzling coming down in digital stereo. Imagine all those people who invented radio like Marconi. Oh.
Clever Freud.
People.
Yeah. But they did enjoy that very much, and you did go for... Oh, you went for... you went for 35 seconds.
Did I?
Yes, indeed. Great. But it was a correct challenge from Clement, and the rain is getting stronger on this tented village, so if anybody thinks we are frying up here, it is not true. It is that at the Daphne du Maurier Festival, it all takes place in a tent. I'm sure you'll bear with us.
Are you telling them that it's in a tent? Did you know this is a tent? Has any of you looked up?
I'm telling our listeners, because this goes round the world and they want to know why the acoustics have changed.
Yes.
And that is the reason.
Yeah.
And so, Clement, you have the subject now. You have 25 seconds on apathy starting now.
A place where you will not find apathy is Home Park in Plymouth, where the Pilgrims play such inspired football that they won the 3rd division last year and will almost definitely succeed.
Tony, challenge.
This is blatant ingratiation. Nothing whatsoever to do with the subject of apathy.
If you're talking about apathy, you want to talk about it and not where you don't find it. So I think maybe Tony has a correct challenge. And 10 seconds available, Tony, starting now.
Recently, I read this book on apathy. It was so good, I couldn't be bothered to put it down. And this is the thing about apathy. It stops you from being...
Paul, challenge.
That's not really apathy when you can't be bothered to stop reading a book. That's not apathy. That's carrying on reading the book.
No, you got enthusiastic. If I have to give it against Clement on the other challenge, I have to give it against you, Julian, Tony, on this one.
Couldn't be bothered to put it down. Is that not apathy?
No, because
you're doing something. You're reading. You're engaging in a...
No. I love this programme. The things we argue about. It's fantastic.
It's like saying I couldn't be bothered to stop gardening.
Yes.
No, that's not apathy, is
Paul,
it?
you're absolutely right.
I am, aren't I?
You're right. And you had the benefit of the doubt. And you've cleverly got him with half a second to go. That's not apathy.
No.
That's keenness. Right. Starting now.
Lower soft and gravy.
Well, they're still very close. Paul Merton speaking of the whistle Wendy is now still equal with Tony Hawkes. They're both in the lead, just one or two ahead, of Julian Clary and Clement Freud in that order. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is wreckers. Tell us something about wreckers in this game, starting now.
Wreckers, on the whole, are people who wreck.
Tony Gyles.
Again, he's exhausted his knowledge on this subject.
You had the good grace to stop. If only we all did that.
Tony got in first. 55 seconds. Wreckers, Tony, starting now.
I don't think I know a great deal more about this subject than Clement Freud, although I imagine from the response from this Cornwall audience that it has some reference to wrecks that are found possibly at sea or near...
Paul, challenge.
Well, they're not found inland, are they? No, you don't get... well, 5 miles inland.
Just a minute. Let's be fair in this. A wreck can be washed up on the shore, and then it would be on land.
Look at yourself.
I think all those who are clapping should now leave. It was an incorrect challenge from Paul. Tony, you still have it. Wreckers, 42 seconds, starting now.
My friend Ron I consider to be a wrecker because he's very into stock car racing, where they take a magnificent old vehicle, drive it round a track, and then, lo and behold, before you know it, it's a wrecker of a vehicle itself. Now, when I was once in Corn Place...
Paul challenge.
Oh, a hesitation, I'm afraid.
Yes, he was. 22 seconds. Tell us something about wreckers, Paul, starting now.
Perhaps I'm not the only one here who's nervous of sitting around all this electrical equipment as the rain is putting down on the tent above us. What a terrible wrecking effect it would have on this show.
Julian challenge.
Hesitation.
I'm not surprised, yes, after the thoughts he put in our mind. 11 seconds, Wreckers with you, Julian, starting now.
There's a gay club in Plymouth called Wreckers, where you think you've met a friend for the night, you take them home, as soon as you turn the lights out, they disappear. Some kind of obscure reference there to Wreckers.
And Julian Clary speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. He's still in third place, but only just behind Paul Merton, and Tony Hawks has one ahead, and then Clement Freud's trained them a little. And just for anybody who may only just now have tuned in, the background noise you hear genuinely is torrential rain coming onto this tented village where we're performing here at the Daphne du Maurier Festival in Foy.
The bacon's ready. Who wants sausages?
It's raining as only it can rain somewhere on the Cornish coast. Tony, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the worst hotel I ever stayed in. Why do you laugh? Because, there's some in Cornwall, are there? Right. Talk on the subject, Tony, starting now.
I try not to stay in hotels if I can avoid it, preferring caravans most of the time. However, the worst hotel I ever stayed in was an improvised affair made out of a tent, and it had a slight leak in the roof. And I had a terrible evening with this drip coming through, and his name was...
Paul's challenge.
It's deviation. You know, hotels aren't made out of tents, are they?
No, he's right. But
you don't get tented hotels.
No.
Have you ever stayed in a hotel that was a tent, Nicholas? You're man of the world.
Yes, I did, in the desert.
Did you really?
In Dubai. You go and have a holiday in a tented village up in the desert in Dubai.
Excellent.
And it's a
what
marvellous
great news
holiday.
for me. Fantastic.
So you can have a
Yes.
you can have a hotel which is a tent.
Okay.
So I'm afraid it was an incorrect challenge. Tony, you've got another point. The worst hotel I ever stayed in, starting now.
So I called down to reception. I said, do you realise what's going on up here? And they said, this is room 324. You've made a ghastly error. Because the telephone system didn't work properly in this hotel. It was so bad. But I can tell you some good things.
Julian challenged.
I thought it'd be an act of kindness. Hesitation.
He didn't actually hesitate, Julian. He was talking rubbish, I know, but I don't think you can have him for that. Do you think he was deviating from the worst hotel?
That as well, obviously.
I've got to be fair when the rules have just a minute. I don't think he was deviating. Utterly boring, but still he keeps the subject. And there are 20 seconds, Tony, starting now.
And then a glove puppet appeared. My goodness, what's that doing here? Now, you can't say that's boring, Nicholas, can you?
Paul challenge.
Boring. Hesitation.
Hesitation and deviation. Right, now, Paul, you have the subject at last. 12 seconds. The worst hotel I ever stayed in, starting now.
The worst hotel I ever stayed in, without a doubt, was on the island.
Clement challenge.
Deviation? Hesitation.
No, he never
Worst
got so
hotel
quick. He went so fast, I can hardly make
That's
up what
right.
he said,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
I-
right.
I-
Couldn't hear it.
I don't normally play this game when we're having a barbecue. The chops are done.
You're a breath of fresh air. Paul, another point to you. 10 seconds. The worst hotel I ever stayed in, starting now.
Tahiti. What a terrible place. It was overrun by giant cats. And when I say they were big, they were enormous.
Clement challenge.
Repetition of they were.
I'm afraid that's true. Yes. And so, Clement, you've got it with 1 second to go on the worst hotel I ever stayed in, starting now.
The Explorator.
So, what is the situation at the end of that round? Well, Clement Freud, speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward. He's just in 4th place, and he's just behind Julian Clary, who's a little way behind Paul Merton, who's 1 point only behind Tony Hawks, as we move into the final round. So it's still anybody's game. Someone can come from the 4th position to the lead as they go rapidly forward. Julian Clary could be you, because you begin the next round, and the subject is Lillibulero. That's a bit of a challenge, isn't it, you know? Anyway, I throw it at you. Do your best. Lillibulero, 60 seconds starting now.
Lillibulero was a drag act from Glasgow, famous, on the whole, for singing songs like Get the Meatballs Out, Mother, We're Coming to a Fork in the Road. Another one, which was a particular favourite, was She Sits Amongst the Cabbages and Peas. You may not remember them, but I certainly do. In fact, in the past, I've incorporated some of Lillibulero's numbers into my act. Do you remember? I may not...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of remember.
Yes, you did remember before. I know it's a pity because you did enjoy it, but we're playing just a minute at the moment, and the laughs are important, but also the rules have to be applied. Clement, you have a correct challenge. You have 32 seconds on Lillibulero starting now.
Mrs. Bulero, who was Spanish and played the Castagnettes, had a number of children, one of whom was called Lily. I met her in Madrid.
Tony challenged.
I thought there was a slight hesitation where he forgot where he met her.
It was a slight hesitation.
I don't want to worry anybody, but I think we're heading out to sea. Which makes the subject of whether Clement mentioned Madrid or not rather irrelevant to our future survival.
Well, I don't think so. I think we're all enjoying ourselves so much. We don't mind if we go out to sea with this, do we? No, let's all float out on a cloud of good humour. Yes. In just a minute like this, who wants anything else? We'll go to sea. Tony, you had a correct challenge. You've got Lillibulero, and you have 21 seconds starting now.
My father was lucky enough to meet Lillibulero in downtown Madrid. And what an evening it was. He was most impressed by her castanets, which she would swing around in quite a cavalier manner, so he told me. But that's another story, and one I won't go into now. She had a brief period as a wrecker in Cornwall, not long before she made her...
Well, Tony Hawk's brought that round to a close with a flourish. You might be interested to know that the next subject was coming up, I've got down here, is in hot water. I think very soon we're all here going to be in cold water. So before that happens, let me give you the final score. Clement Freud, who often comes out on top, finished just in fourth place, but only 1 point behind Julian Clary. And he was 3 or 4 points behind Paul Merton, but 3 points ahead of him, with a magnificent total of 18 points, was Tony Hawk. So this week we say, Tony, you are our winner. So it only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 fine, funny and humorous and clever players of the game. Paul Merton, Julian Clary, Tony Hawks and Clement Freud. I thank Claire Bartlett for helping with the score and blowing her whistle. We're grateful to our producer, Claire Jones, and also we're indebted to Ian Messiter, who thought of this game. And we're deeply indebted to this lovely Cornish audience here in Foy. From my fine panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, thank you for tuning in. Be with us next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, and of course particularly in this country. And also to welcome to the programme 4 diverse, talented, exuberant, passionate players of the game, who once more are going to pit their wits, their shows their verbal ingenuity, and also their humorous dexterity, as they speak on a subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from that subject. Would you please welcome the 4 bright sparks that we have with us for this particular show? They are Jenny Eclair, Gyles Brandreth, Chris Neill, and Clement Freud. Please welcome all 4 of them. Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow her whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the beautiful, magnificent Alhambra Theatre in that fine city of Bradford, in that great county of Yorkshire. And we have a really passionate Yorkshire audience in front of us, ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject is the Saxons. Tell us something about those in this game, starting now.
The Saxons used to live in Saxony, which is pretty much the way it should have been and ought to have stayed. They were pirates, and in the early Middle Ages they occupied what is now France and Germany, and some of them came to England. The acute...
Chris, Neill challenged.
Was that a hesitation?
It was a hesitation, yes. So that's a correct challenge. So Chris Neill gets a point for a correct challenge. He takes over the subject, which is the Saxons. There are 42 seconds available, starting now.
Of course, we all know that it was the Saxons who introduced curry to the north of England. What with dishes like biryani the unready and vindaloo the fearless, they became very, very popular. Oh, I just said very twice.
Jenny Eclair, you challenge.
He knew what he was doing. He was going so beautifully. I feel guilty.
No, I did say very twice.
Yes, you did.
I know. And so, Jenny, you have a correct challenge and a point, and 31 seconds. You tell us something about the Saxons, starting now.
Sorry. The Saxons were little felt creatures who lived on the moon. No, that's the clangers, isn't it? I got horribly confused.
Clement challenged.
Deviation.
Yes. You admitted your deviation yourself, Jenny. So, Clement, another point to you, and you take back the subject, the Saxons, starting now.
The ones who came to what is now the British Isles were known as Anglo-Saxons, and the acute Angles turned left and occupied the southern part, what is now Hampshire and Dorset and Wiltshire, and the obtuse ones turned north, and you find them all over Yorkshire.
Gyles,
I had hoped to save Clement from himself.
I know.
And from being lynched on his way to his guest house tonight.
Yes.
And I think he felt there was a moment of hesitation as well, because he was wondering whether he dared say what
there was a moment of hesitation. He was plucking up the courage to say it, and the audience reaction when he said it proved that he was wrong. So, Gyles, you have a correct challenge, so you keep a point for that, and you have 7 seconds available. Tell us something about the Saxons, starting now.
The Saxons are a dysfunctional family living in Bradford to whom I am distantly related. They like to claim that they come from an aristocratic background, but I suspect...
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion was Gyles Brandreth, and as they all got a point in that round, Gyles is one ahead of them. What a very fair way to begin the show. And Gyles, the second round, will you take it, please? A sticky situation. Tell us something about a sticky situation, starting now.
A sticky situation is where you are an actor appearing in a live radio program playing the role of a detective, and your opening moment is to say, that is the chair Schmidt sat in when he was shot. And somehow your vowels let you down. That is in every sense a very sticky situation. The stickiest situation in which I have ever found myself was an encounter between Yehudi Menuhin, the great fiddler, and the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Chris Neill challenged.
Deviation is difficult for a boy like me, but I only know normal people. I don't know the Archbishop of Canterbury. I don't know what he's talking about.
Right. Well, sorry, I'm sad that you don't know who the Archbishop of Canterbury is, but it doesn't really matter. He's the head of the Church of England, if it helps you. But
I thought that was the Queen.
Oh, yes!
Yes. Bonus point to Jane. Now, listen. He wasn't actually deviating within the rules of just a minute, so he gets another point. He keeps the subject, a sticky situation, 33 seconds, starting now.
When two strawberries are found together in the same bed, and one of them actually finds they're in the jam, it is, of course, a sticky situation, because a pregnant strawberry, when it isn't properly married...
Jenny challenge.
Strawberry.
Two strawberry.
You said strawberries before.
He said strawberries and strawberry.
I apologise, Gyles.
Listen up, girl.
Gyles, an incorrect challenge, so you keep the subject, 23 seconds, a sticky situation starting now.
When computers fall in love, you soon hear the patter of tinny feet. This is considered a sticky situation if you are not, in fact, in favour of matrimony between artificial...
Hesitation.
That was a hesitation, yes. I think he was going down a path he couldn't really see where to go. Clement, you have a correct challenge, and you have a sticky situation, and 12 seconds starting now.
If you mix flour and milk and salt and honey And?
Jenny challenged.
Vile of me, but and. And. I'm so sorry, Bradford.
Not a popular challenge.
No.
But and the fact that you also come from Lancashire doesn't help either.
They hate me.
But a correct challenge, so within the rules of just a minute, I have to give it to you, Jenny. You have 7 seconds. You tell us something about a sticky situation starting now.
Ulrika Johnson and Sven Goran Eriksson. Now, there's a sticky situation. By now, it's probably ended.
So Jenny Eclair was then speaking when the whistle went and gained that extra point. She's now in the lead with Gyles Brandreth just ahead of the other two. Chris Neill, will you take the next round? The subject is what I see when I look in the mirror. Take that subject. Tell us something about what I see when I look in the mirror, starting now.
Square-jawed, blue-eyed, blonde hair, good sense of humour, clean, well-burnished skin by the sun from all me sunbathing.
Jenny challenged.
He kind of hesitated,
Yeah.
got a bit confused, and I think I was standing behind him. That's who he could see.
No, I don't think you're burnished, Jenny, no. But Jenny was a correct challenge, so you have 50 seconds to tell us something about what I see when I look in the mirror.
That was a hesitation.
That was a
There you
hesitation.
go!
When does he say go?
Did I say now, actually? Didn't I say now, then?
No.
Didn't I say now, Claire?
I think you did. Oh, shush.
All right. If the audience be the judges, did I not say now? No. Thank you very much
No,
indeed,
you said,
audience.
did I not say now? And they said no, which means you did.
Jenny, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Ignore that challenge. Jenny, will you talk about what I see when I look in the mirror starting now?
Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see a car. That's when I realise I shouldn't be applying lipstick when I'm driving. Always on looking in the looking glass. Very bad of me, I'm
Gyles,
sorry.
challenge.
Yes, Gyles, you're right.
Hesitations, repetitions.
Yes.
Dangerous driving.
I am a very bad person.
We want to throw the book at her.
I don't see why you should. She's lovely. Don't throw the book at her. You have one correct challenge when the rules are just a minute, and you kept the subject to 38 seconds. What I see when I look in the mirror, starting now.
When I got up this morning, I pottered into the bathroom and gazed into the mirror, and I saw this vision of loveliness. Then I popped in my contact lenses, and a sad, baggy,
Jenny
middle-aged
challenge.
face appeared.
Two popped. Popped into the bathroom,
Popped into
his
the bathroom.
contact
You popped in
lenses.
your contact lenses.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I must be careful with the poppers, I know that.
Jenny, you have the subject back, and you have 30 seconds. What I see when I look in the mirror, starting now.
Last time I looked in the mirror, I thought, goodness, what's Iggy Pop doing in here? Then I realised it was me.
Chris, you challenged.
Was that hesitation after realised?
No, it wasn't a hesitation. Jenny, you have another point, and you have 24 seconds. What I see when I look in the mirror, starting now.
I said, what are you doing in here? He said, I'm licking your grouting clean.
You just couldn't resist
No.
it. You got a big laugh and you had to lean on it. And Chris, you got him first with hesitation. 17 seconds. You tell us something more about what I see when I look in the mirror, starting now.
What I see when I look in the mirror are some really tip-top news stories. God, they know how to tell us what's going on today. And then there's the 3 a.m. girls. They're fascinating. I don't quite know what they do, but apparently they're great. And
Clement, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was a definite there. So, Clement, a point and 4 seconds. What I see when I look in the mirror, starting now.
I rather prefer it to the sun because altogether the sports results.
So Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went, and he's moved forward. They're all very close there. Jenny Eclair is just ahead by 1 point. Gyles, your turn to begin. The subject is Cowboys. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I appreciate that these days cowboys and Indians are referred to as cattle managers and Native Americans. But I'm not somebody who is into political correctness in any way. And therefore, in my dreams, I picture myself riding alongside John Wayne. What a glorious figure of a man he was. And how magnificent I think I would have looked on a little steed next door to him, clip-clopping our way through the...
Chris challenged.
Deviation, he would not look magnificent.
This is one of those impossible decisions because in Gyles' fantasy world, he could be looking magnificent.
That's simply insulting, Nicholas,
What's that?
Isn't it? Simply insulting.
Well, but yes, there's quite a few insults banded about in just a minute. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put this to the superior wisdom of our audience here in the Alhambra Theatre here at Bradford. If you agree with Chris's challenge, and, I mean, visually, yes, it's probably correct. But you'll have to remember the rules of just a minute. Was he deviating within the rules of just a minute? Difficult to tell. You can be the judge. Cheer for Chris if you agree. Boo for Chris if you disagree. All do it together now. Chris, they're with you to a man and a boy. And a girl.
Kisses all round later.
Right. You have a point. You have 38 seconds. Cowboys starting now.
They're mean, they're aggressive, they shoot first, and they ask questions later. Yes, of course, I'm talking plumbers. Now...
Clement, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was a hesitation. No, it's a tough game. You get a big laugh. You cannot lean back on your laughs like that. Because then you hesitate.
No one will notice, and I'll just sort of creep back in quietly later.
No, we have to do that old phrase we've used before on this show. You ride the laugh, because otherwise you come in. Clement, a correct challenge. 30 seconds. Tell us something about Cowboys starting now.
It is an interesting fact that while cowboys were immensely capable, skilled, and had...
Jenny, challenge.
Minute hesitation.
I know, but not enough
Not
to...
enough. I'm sorry.
Clement, you have the benefit of the doubt. You have 24 seconds. You have Cowboys starting now.
I don't want 24 seconds on cowboys.
So you don't have it. Chris, you challenge me.
That deviation.
Yes, 20 seconds. Cowboys with you, Chris, starting now.
Those filmed with cowboys in them, called cowboy movies, I find very dull, I have to tell you. Always black and white on the telly. My nan would be watching the wrestling. I'd want to watch the cowboy film, even though I find it dull, the wrestling.
Jenny challenged.
Watch and dull were repeated.
Yes, that's right. You didn't have both down. Just one's enough.
I'll choose dull.
Right.
Thanks.
12 seconds, Jenny. Cowboys starting now.
Cowboys traditionally smoke 30 Marlboro cigarettes a day, eat hordes of red meat.
Gyles challenged.
I'm afraid there was hesitation.
No, there wasn't. She was going a bit slow.
No, some phlegm came up my throat and I went hordes instead of...
No, she didn't hesitate, Gyles.
Deviation in the pronunciation of the word hordes, and the idea of eating hordes.
I'm
of this
quite
red meat.
ill, Gyles.
So
Jenny,
sorry.
you still have the subject, and you have 5 seconds on Cowboys starting now.
And they peg out at 50, which is why women love them so much. Oh, can I marry a cowboy?
Right, so Jenny Eclair, with another point for speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward, increased her lead just ahead of Giles Brandreth and Clement Freud and Chris Neill in that order. And Jenny, your turn to begin. The subject is getting up in the morning. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I'm actually really good at getting up in the morning. Soon as that alarm goes off at 6:30, I bound out of bed, saying, "Hello, day, let's get cracking," which my knees do. I then wander into the bathroom, clean my teeth, because after a night's sleep, I have breath like a camel that smoked 100 cigarettes and has gum disease. Then I do some yoga positions, unless I've got a hangover, in which case I don't want sick on my knees. After that...
Chris challenged.
Was that a hesitation?
No, there wasn't. No. I thought the image she conjured up was enough to make anybody hesitate. But, it wasn't hesitation. She kept going very well. 31 seconds, Jenny, getting up in the morning, starting now.
I have my breakfast, otherwise my blood sugar levels drop dramatically low and I turn into a bitch. Then I drive my daughter to school. She can't walk. She's a teenager. She hasn't got any muscle tone, for heaven's sake. After that, I sit in my study.
Clement challenged.
We've had 2 after that.
Yes,
two
I
after
was
that.
getting boring.
No, you weren't. I think they enjoyed it. Clement, you've got in with 14 seconds on getting up in the morning, starting now.
At my age, getting it up in the morning is not...
Jenny challenge. What is your challenge, Jenny?
I thought it was a deviation. He's given me a picture in my head that's making me feel uncomfortable.
Well, the subject on the card is getting up in the morning, and if he says that what he did say, then he's deviating from the subject, isn't it? So, in every sense of the thought, he's pointed up. So, 11 seconds for you, Jenny, on getting up in the morning, starting now.
My partner is hopeless at getting up in the morning. He likes to do it in silence, which is when I start singing. Have you ever watched GMTV? God, what a hilarious programme that is. It's complete.
So, Jenny Eclair speaking as the whistle went. Started with the subject and she finished with it, and she's now 2 ahead of Gyles Brandreth in that order, and just 4 ahead of Clement Freud, who's 3rd place, few ahead of Chris Neill. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is grumpy. Tell us something about grumpy in this game, starting now.
In the year 1936, I got on my bicycle in Walberswick, and I cycled to Lowestoft, where Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was on at the local Odeon cinema. Price £3 admission. No concessions, not to anyone. And one of the dwarves in that film was called Grumpy.
Gyles challenge.
I'm so sorry, because it's a lovely story, but you see, we've had the film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and then one of the dwarves was Grumpy. So it's a repetition of dwarves.
I said dwarfs.
Dwarves. You pronounced the word correctly, but twice.
So, Gyles, you have the subject and 36 seconds on grumpy, starting now.
Grumpy is what Sir Clement Freud is when he can't get it up in the morning.
Chris challenge.
Deviation, how do you know that?
Because I was here 3 minutes ago and I heard him tell several million people so.
No.
What we do on that...
I can't get it up in the morning. He didn't say it made him unhappy.
Listen...
I could see him.
So what is your challenge when the rules are just a minute?
I thought you'd give the subject to me.
No. Well, what we'll do is we'll give you a bonus point because the audience enjoyed your interruption, but you didn't have a challenge within the rules of just a minute. Gyles gets a point for being interrupted. He keeps the subject. There are 31 seconds. Grumpy with you, Gyles, starting now.
If you strike up a cigarette next to my neighbour, he fumes while you smoke, because grumpy is something that this great former politician does with ease. We wonder why. Was it something to do with his curious childhood, coming from this bizarre family where...
Chris challenge.
I'd stop now if I were you.
Jenny's challenge as well.
2 froms.
I know, but it's a bit late now, darling.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So what was your challenge when the rules are just a
Well, no, I
minute?
was just trying to save Gyles, really.
I know you were.
It wasn't really a challenge.
Well, give me a challenge when the rules are just a minute, otherwise it keeps with Gyles.
He hesitated.
No, he didn't, unfortunately.
From twice.
From twice. I don't know whether I can say subject. I think in order to save Gyles, and also it was a correct challenge. He did say from twice. 16 seconds. Chris, grumpy, starting now.
I was told a really filthy joke that involved Viz.
So, Gyles.
Well...
Yes, you've got it back again, haven't you? So there you are. So you have another point, Gyles. So it all balances out evenly. 11 seconds. Grumpy, starting now.
Grumpy Mumpy Rumpy is a game that my wife and I play when she's in a terrible mood, and funnily enough, it excites her, delights her, and turns her into a really pleasant person, because it's vital for me to live with somebody who is...
So Gyles Brandreth speaking as the whistle went, getting that extra point, and others in the round. He's now taken the lead, just 2 ahead of Jenny Eclair, followed by Clement Freud and Chris Neill. And Gyles, it's also your turn to begin. The subject is the Brontes. Tell us something about the Brontes in this game, starting now.
Cross the author of Wuthering Heights with a book that contains lists of words with similar meanings and you get a Brontosaurus. I have long been an admirer of the work of this remarkable clan. Emily, Charlotte, and the younger brother who was called something like Hallam, but not exactly that. I've never been really good on dropping names from the 19th century. My particular enthusiasm is the present one.
Chris challenge.
It's called Bramwell.
Have you a challenge within the rules of just a minute?
I don't know why I've taken it upon myself just to help Gyles.
Yeah, and there were 2 other daughters, Marie and Elizabeth, who died.
I've only just got started.
No. Don't give him more ammunition, because he keeps the subject, because he was interrupted there. And there are 35 seconds, Gyles, on the Brontes starting now.
I know the Bronte country well because there is a hill just outside Ilkley called Brandreth, defined in the dictionary as a substructure of piles, but actually a very attractive part of the rural scene. And I have been up on long walks while reading novels by these curious and interesting and remarkable writers, and I have found, while sitting there taking my picnic, to think that the Brontes actually strode across these moors. It gives you an exuberant feeling that makes your juices flow, your hair stand on end if you have got it, and you suddenly realize, yes, I'm glad I wear a chest wig and matching underarm toupee.
As we go into the final round, let me give you the state of play as regards the points, because some people are very interested in this. Let me tell you that Chris is trailing Neill, is trailing just a little.
I'm trailing Neill.
Chris Neill is trailing a little. I didn't say a little what, but he's just trailing. I was about to say he's trailing a little behind, but I mean that would also be... He's trailing...
Oh, very amusing. Mock the minority, why not?
And just a little way behind Clement Freud. Not much, and Clement often does very well and wins. He is 4 points behind Jenny Eclair, and she's 4 points behind Gyles Brandreth. And Chris, it's your turn to begin.
Oh, is it?
So, with a great panache and style, you might leap forward, and I think it'd be difficult, but have a go anyway. As we go into the final round, which is how to avoid stress, which I think is very apt. But anyway, tell us something about it, Chris, starting now.
One way to avoid stress is not to appear on Just a Minute. I have to tell you, it is a very, very... Oh, I done it!
It's a stressful game,
I know, but
isn't
can't I be allowed that? Because I could say it's just like one word for me.
No. It's like one word from other people. That's the whole art of the game and the fun of the game, isn't it? So, Jenny, you got in first, 54 seconds. Tell us something about how to avoid stress starting now.
Some people move out of London to the country where they die of boredom. Good. The other thing you can do is go
Chris
swimming.
challenged.
Was that hesitation?
That was a hesitation,
Yeah,
yes,
it
you got
was.
it back. So, 47 seconds, Chris. Tell us something about how to avoid stress starting now.
I like to put the heating up high, close the windows, possibly light the fire as well. Then I lie down with a large bottle of brandy and knock myself out.
Clement, what a chance.
Deviation.
Why?
He's talking about committing suicide.
Well, some people actually...
That would sort of avoid stress,
Well,
wouldn't
some
it, if you're
people
a bit
do commit
stressed?
suicide to avoid stress, so...
What a happy note to end the show on.
But that is his way of avoiding stress. It may be pretty bizarre and extreme, but he can say it if he wants to in just a minute, because those are the rules. He wasn't hesitating, deviating, or repeating anything. 40 seconds, another point to you, Chris. You're doing well. Keep it up.
Thank you.
You may overtake them all. How to avoid stress. 40 seconds, starting now.
Thankfully, I tend to get there the next morning and I wake up with a bit of a sore head, it has to be said. And then I think, I still want to avoid me stress. My life is too hard. I've got no money in the bank, no one to love, no one cares.
Jenny, challenge.
No one.
Don't rub it in, Jenny,
Yeah,
please.
thanks.
It's right.
No one
Jenny.
loves you. You've got no money in the bank. No, nothing.
Jenny. You're so lovely, usually. I don't know why. Anyway, you've got 30 seconds. Tell us something about how to avoid stress starting now.
Avoiding stress can be done by yoga, not the way I do it, as I'm furiously competitive, and if there's some bitch on the mat next to me who's younger and thinner, then obviously I have to,
Right, this seems to be a one-sided event, just the two of them on this side of me. Chris, you challenge first.
Well, Jenny's the subject how to avoid stress, and then Jenny's saying not the way I do it, so it's not really instruction for
What
it,
about
really.
hesitation?
And hesitation.
Yes, hesitation. 20 seconds, Chris. How to avoid stress starting now.
I like to go for a long walk on Peckham Rye, which is a park near me. There are lovely trees.
Jenny, challenge.
You really cannot avoid stress by walking along Peckham Rye. I know this because I live in South East London as well.
Jenny,
maybe
it could be within the rules that he could find his way of avoiding stress. It might be... And if you know Peckham Rye, I quite agree with you. I can't see. I think will increase your stress.
There's a nice park there.
There is. Anyway, you weren't deviating within the rules of just a minute. So you have 16 seconds. How to avoid Chris stress. No, how to avoid stress. Starting now.
The other thing I do is play the piano. I love playing this particular instrument.
Giles played.
Play.
No,
I
play
said play
and
and playing.
playing.
I interrupted him at the point before he got to the ing.
No, doesn't matter. He said play first and then playing. So,
Fair enough.
Chris, you are going to do it, you know, Chris. You've got another point. You've got 12 seconds. How to avoid stress starting now.
Once I'm bored with my own music making, well, then I might turn the stereo on and listen to some young people's music, maybe something like the Beatles.
Giles challenge.
I'm afraid there was a repetition of music
There
making.
was
I was
repetition.
reluctant to do it.
Yes. But, so Giles,
There
you've got
is
into
so
6
much
seconds
music
on
in life.
how to avoid stress starting now.
St. John's wort is the remedy I take, but I feel embarrassed asking for it at the shop because of the strange name that it contains, and therefore I'm still on the value.
Well, as I said before, this was to be the last round. Giles Brandreth spoke as a whistle when gained that all-important extra point. Chris Neill got a huge number of points in that round and doubled the amount he had. He doubled his score, but unfortunately still finished in third place. But he was one ahead of Clement Freud, who usually does so well in the show. He was just behind Jenny Eclair, but 3 points ahead of her was Giles Brandreth. So we say, Giles, you're the winner this week. Thank you. It only remains me to say thank you to our 4 distinguished and exciting players of the game, Giles Brandreth, Jenny Eclair, Chris Neill and Clement Freud. Also thank Claire Bartlett, who's helped me keep the score and blow her whistle. We thank our producer, Claire Jones, for her work and contribution to the show. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we are deeply indebted to this lovely audience here in the Alhambra Theatre in Bradford, who have cheered us on our way magnificently. From that lovely audience, from the lovely panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye until the next time we take to the air and we play Just a Minute.
And you can join Nicholas Parsons at the same time next week when the panellists are Sue Perkins, Wendy Richard, Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Tony Hawkes.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners in this country and throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 exciting and talented players of the game who've all got a lot of experience at it. We welcome back that man with such erudite humour, Kit Hesketh-Harvey, the one with the engaging humour, Sue Perkins, the one with the offbeat and surreal humour, Tony Hawkes, and someone whose humour is forever evergreen because she's been around and starred in so many things. That is Wendy Richard. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Lottie Barker, who's going to help me keep the score, and she will blow her whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Drill Hall Arts Centre in the Bloomsbury area of London, and we have a fine cosmopolitan London audience with us. As we begin the show this week with Wendy Richard, and who better? Wendy, the subject is a nice London subject, the changing of the guard. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I am ashamed to admit I have never seen the changing of the guard, but in real life anyway.
Sue Perkins challenge.
Slight hesitation.
There was a hesitation, I'm afraid, yes. It's.
I was just giving it a bit more background.
I know. You had a correct challenge, so you get a point for that, Sue, and you have 54 seconds to tell us something about the changing of the guard, starting now.
Why do they have to change the guard? He's doing so well. He stands there for 12 hours. He doesn't say anything, motionless. And then this other guy comes along dressed in exactly the same fashion, and he's given the heave-ho. Where do all the changed guards go? That's what I want to know.
Tony Hawkes, you challenge?
Bed.
Now?
Tony, they might go to bed sometimes to have a rest, but they don't just all go to bed. So technically, in order to give an interpretation to your challenge, I think it would be unfair to give it to you. So Sue has another incorrect challenge, and she has the subject still of changing of the guard, and 40 seconds starting now.
It seems to me like unspeakable torture to have to keep your mouth shut for 12 hours, but that's me for you.
Tony challenge.
Repetition of 12 hours.
Yes, you made 12 hours before.
Did I?
Yes, you did. Right, Tony, you had a correct challenge. You have 34 seconds. You take over the subject of the changing of the guard starting now.
In one sense, I suppose the England football team are going to have a changing of the guard. If you think of the goalkeeper as having that role, and David Seaman, of course, is approaching the end of his career. But if he does retire, he can go...
Wendy challenged.
I'm sick of football.
Well, you stuck a wrong...
People are listening to this because they want to get away from football.
So what is your challenge with the rules of just a minute, Wendy?
Well, he's deviating, going on about football.
Well, actually, Wendy, I've got to say, he's not deviating. You may be bored by it, and you may have struck a chord in this audience.
Well, I'll tell you what, then, Nicholas,
listen, audience, we're playing
really
just a minute.
Unfair of you, because that's a definite deviation.
No, it wasn't. Though you may hate your football, and a lot of other people are bored with football.
Stop, Mum, they're frightening me.
I had to be fair within the rules of just a minute and say, Tony, it was an incorrect challenge, so you keep the subject, you get a point for an incorrect challenge. You have 17 seconds, but please don't mention football again. And the changing of the guard, starting now.
The guard stands in his little box, and the tourists come by and take photographs of him. Then, at an appointed moment in time, he exchanges with another one, who replaces him roughly in the same place as he...
Surely it's illegal to be replaced roughly in a public place.
So what is your challenge, Sue?
Well, I can't... It won't sound like this to the listener, but he was stalling. I know he was approaching a moment of hesitation. Because he has this little flicky eyes thing.
Yes,
and he was
I know.
looking at the clock as if to say, come on, help me.
Right, I could
failing,
see.
I'm failing.
You're sitting next to him, and you were therefore closer to
I smell
observe this.
fear.
And maybe that... maybe that observation is correct. But technically, within the rules of just a minute, it was not correct. So he has another incorrect challenge, another point, and 3 seconds on the changing of the guard, starting now.
His hat sometimes catches on the top of the booth as he moves out.
Whoever is speaking in this game when the whistle goes gains an extra point on this occasion. It was Tony Hawks. And Sue, it's your turn to begin. And the subject here, a lovely one, acronyms. Tell us something about acronyms in just a minute, starting now.
Acronyms are useful ways of remembering...
Tony challenge.
Well, I think there was a hesitation there.
There was, yes. It was
I'm
so
rather
useful
regretting
to-
this because I'm not very good on this subject, I don't think.
It's
Acronym.
horrible.
It's
I'm
horrible.
glad you
Anyway,
No, it's a toughie.
Horrid.
I'm going to
We
give it a
have to
go,
throw
and
a
I'm
few
going to
toughies
do
in.
56 seconds or whatever it takes.
Right.
Come on.
Acronyms is with you, Tony. 57 seconds, starting now.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization is an acronym. Only when used as NATO. Obviously, when you say those words, it wouldn't be an acronym. It would...
Sue
It was
challenge.
a repetition of when.
Yes, when, yes. You got it back to front and you tried to wriggle out of it, but it's bad luck, Tony, because Sue got in first. 46 seconds. Acronyms with you, Sue, starting now.
My favourite acronym is SPRM, the Society for the Prevention of Roger Moore. This is a society, I know.
Tony challenge.
Just enjoying myself.
Repetition of society.
Yes, that's right. Tony, you've got the subject back, which you don't want, and you have 37 seconds. Acronyms starting now.
When I was at school, I was a little lad. It was the right way to go about going to school.
She challenged.
Sorry, repetition of school.
Yes, these
there.
tough subjects get a lot of fun. This is good. Kit, you've got a correct challenge. Still 32 seconds available. Acronyms starting now.
Hawks becomes handsome, athletic, witty, kind-eyed stud.
Tony challenge.
There's no E in Hawks.
Oh, is there not?
No.
I'm so sorry, listeners.
Tony, you've got the subject back, which you don't want. And
so
you've got
much to say.
27 seconds on acronyms starting now.
I was particularly stupid when I was in class and was unable to grasp the concept of an acronym. And a teacher sat me down, said, Tony, listen carefully, I will explain exactly how it works to you. And I did. I listened extremely hard.
And Sue,
Listened.
you listened too much.
The first one was listen and the second one was
Oh,
listen.
right, then No, listen and listened. Tony, you've got acronyms. You've got 11 seconds starting now.
Light amplification by stimulated emission of irradiation is laser, in fact, and not a lot of people know that. Unfortunately, at last, I'm coming up with something interesting on this awful...
And Kit challenge.
Deviation, it's very boring.
Actually, what we'll do, Kit, we'll give you a bonus point because the audience enjoyed your interruption, but it was an interruption. It wasn't a correct challenge, so he's still got it. He didn't want it, but he's doing very well with it. And you've got another point, Tony, and you've got 1 second on acronyms starting now.
Watto, the world at one.
So the man who didn't want the subject kept going with it in spite of interruptions and has leapt forward, and he's got twice as many points as Sue Perkins and almost as many as Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Wendy Richard in that order. And Tony, it's also your turn to begin. So it's backhanders now. Can you tell us something about backhanders in just a minute, starting now?
I've just finished watching 2 weeks of Wimbledon where I saw a number of backhands, but no backhanders. And some would say this is a shame, because if there were backhanders, perhaps we'd get a British winner. Which hasn't happened for some time. I gave £2,000 in used £10 notes to Nicholas Parsons in brown paper bags before the show. And I'm hoping that as a result of that, I will be treated favourably in the coming seconds. And indeed, beyond that, should I continue to be participatory in this marvellous show, which I am enjoying so much and not doing quite badly in, actually.
Sue Perkins challenge.
Grammatical, not doing quite badly. So basically beating around the linguistic bush.
Yes, that's all right, Sue. It's just English as we understand it and normally speak it. Deviation, right. Sue, correct challenge, 22 seconds, backhanders starting now.
Tony, what you have to realise is that just before this show, I gave Nicholas Parsons £500 in order that every single interruption I made was facilitated with one simple wink and a casual smile, which has become, of course, his trademark. The Silver Fox, as he is known, took my money, lovingly put it into his corduroyed back pocket and waltzed into the most beautiful environment here at the Drill Hall in Lillibulero.
I love the idea that I earn my living on this show from backhanders from the team. Right. I'm going to hold them to this. Sue Perkins, you were speaking as the whistle went with other points in that round. You have moved forward. You're only 3 behind Tony Hawks, followed by Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Wendy Richard. And Wendy, your turn to begin. The subject, reality TV. Will you tell us something about that in this game starting now?
Apparently, it's this Big Brother, which thankfully I have never clapped eyes on. How you can call that entertainment, watching a load of people living in some house and doing all their ablutions and other bits and pieces that they get on with.
Kit Hesketh-Harvey.
Genders.
What's that? Kit, you didn't win many friends with that
No, I'm
one.
sorry, I'm missing the look of the basilisk from the left
I
hand.
know. Kit is sitting next to Wendy Richard, and if looks could kill, I mean, Kit would be a dead
I love
man now.
EastEnders, and she's magnificent in it, and long may she continue!
Well said, Kit. You brought back the smile to Wendy's face. And
You little toady.
And so, Wendy, you were interrupted. You have a point for an incorrect challenge. You have 42 seconds. Tell us more about reality TV starting now.
It's almost as boring as those other things they have on the box about painting people's rooms and gardens. Aren't you sick of it?
Tony, challenge.
It's pointless painting a garden.
I said and.
No, be fair, Tony. Painting people's rooms and gardens. In my mind, she established there were programs about gardening. I don't think it was a devious...
Do you know what I was trying to be clever?
I know you were. And sometimes you succeed. But if they're going to get at me, I'll have to get back at them. Whatever. Right. Wendy, another point to you. When you have 33 seconds, you still have reality TV starting now.
There seems to be a severe lack of imagination when it comes to providing entertainment for the viewer.
Kit Hesketh-Harvey, challenge.
Repetition of entertainment, I'm
You
afraid.
mentioned entertainment before.
Did I?
Yes, you did.
So
Mike.
how you can call that entertainment, I do not
right.
know.
You're so right. Yes, I
Yes,
did.
right. And Kit, you've got in with 17 seconds to go, and it's reality TV starting now.
It's just as well that Just a Minute is not on TV, because the reality is that Parsons, to give him his acronym, is a practically Alzheimer's rheumatoid senile, obviously needing sedation.
Sue, challenge in the middle of your
Sorry, I
acting.
shouldn't have challenged because I was enjoying that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, there was hesitation.
No, the fact that he kept going, even though I would
See,
like to give it
Nicholas
again.
is going to let him keep the subject just because he mentioned his name again, and he loves hearing his name mentioned on the radio.
No, I'm show you how generous I am, because I think he was so clever to try and get an acronym out of my name that I think he kept going with style and panache. So, Sue, it was an incorrect challenge. And, Kit, you keep the subject, reality TV. 4 seconds, starting now.
Regarding the aforementioned show which Wendy was on about.
Tony, challenge.
Did he say show in the last bit he said? Is that repetition of show?
Oh, I didn't know.
No, you didn't say show before.
Just a minute.
Just a minute,
Just
you probably
a minute.
didn't
No,
say
we didn't
show.
talk about show.
It was a
Tony-
desperate attempt.
I know. You're all keen. I won't discourage it. Kit, another point to you. Another 2 seconds available. Reality TV starting now.
Reality TV.
Oh, Kit was speaking then as a whistle when gained an extra point, and others in the round. He's moved forward. He's now equal with Sue Perkins in second place, just behind Tony Hawks, and Wendy's caught up a little bit on all of them. Kit, your turn to begin. The subject is the tip of the iceberg. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The best thing to do with the tip of the iceberg is to drowse it. Sorry, I've been eating too much lettuce.
I think there was a hesitation.
Yes,
Well, there's a
complete
deviation, a
collapse.
stumble, and so we would call that hesitation. Correct challenge, Tony. You've got another point. You've got 56 seconds. The tip of the iceberg starting now.
When the Titanic set sail from Belfast onwards to Southampton and then across the Atlantic, little did it know that there was an iceberg waiting for it with a very significant tip at the end, which it would...
Sue, challenge.
Isn't the tip at the top?
Well, and
I
the
suppose
end.
it can jut
Sort of
out.
goes-
No, it's the tip is at the side. They always refer to the bit they hit. They call that the tip of the iceberg. It may not be at the top, because the ship wouldn't hit the top. It'd hit something jutting out, you
No,
see.
I got as far as the ship not hitting the top because it's not a
But
plane.
you
I
did
suppose,
challenge
but,
for the tip being at the top. And the tip is the bit the ship hits, and so incorrect challenge. Very keen, don't discourage it. 43 seconds. The tip of the iceberg with you, Tony, starting now.
The first 5 seconds of speaking during the minute in this programme seems to feel like the tip of the iceberg, and yet the iceberg is not that far away from your grasp as you continue speaking, filling...
Kit challenge.
Didn't we have speaking
Yes,
twice?
we did.
I think we
Yes.
did. I'm sorry, Tony.
Speak and speaking, I think.
Or was it speaking?
As you
speaking?
begin to speak...
You're a long
In
way
which
away
case
from
I
it.
grovel
You begin to
humbly.
speak, you're quite right, Tony. Yes, incorrect challenge. Tony, tip of the iceberg starting now.
If an iceberg could speak, it would be very interesting to know what it...
speak and then speak before.
Yes, I did say that time.
The speaking.
Sue was listening well, as usual. Another point to her and the subject. 24 seconds. The tip of the iceberg starting now.
The tip of the iceberg can also mean the thing that finally topples you over into the brink of madness, the abyss, the terrifying heart of yourself. In this case, speaking on this subject, for what must be now 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Please help me, God.
Kit challenge.
Eventually hesitation, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was deviation, but
deviation.
but she did actually hesitate as well, yes. But anyway, I have to give it against that. Kit, you have the subject. You have 8 seconds. It is the tip of the iceberg starting now.
A mixture of olive oil, anchovies, parmesan cheese, bacon lardons.
Sue, why you challenge?
How can that be to do with an iceberg?
You get your iceberg lettuce,
Oh,
don't
I
you?
see.
Dress it in that, and you get a Caesar
If you
salad.
get too keen, Sue, and you challenge before they've established what they're trying to say, you can trip yourself up.
I feel I've been
unfortunately.
disciplined by you.
Right. No, it doesn't matter. It's all grist to the will and the fun of just a minute. Kit's
Grist to the will. What are you on, Nicholas? Go
What's
on.
that?
Go on. Grist to the will.
No, I said grist to the mill. Can't you hear?
No, you didn't. You said, Will, what proof is that water you've got?
I'll have some more of it. Right. Tip of the iceberg is now still with you, Kit. 5 seconds available, starting now.
You seize your iceberg lettuce in both hands.
Wendy challenge.
Did you say iceberg?
No, he said it outside the game.
I said it outside,
Beg your
yes. I'm
pardon.
sorry.
That's all right. No, no, that's right.
Hesketh-Harvey.
We have to
Yes,
listen.
don't worry.
There are 3 seconds still with you, Kit, on the tip of the iceberg, starting now.
It jutted out of the water above the proud Bering Straits.
Wait a minute, Sue challenge.
Water before in the first section.
No, that was Tony
No,
had
Tony
water.
was talking about
He
the
was on the
water.
water.
You
He
can't
was...
forgive me how my mind's become adult. It seems to me I've been here all my life.
No, it has been a long time, but
I
there we are.
apologise
And, of course, the heat gets to everybody. It's very, very hot in here, and it's a hot summer's evening, and there's no air conditioning. It can get to you sometimes, and people often confuse their words when they're overheated. So, Kit, you have another point because you had another incorrect challenge. And you got half a second on the tip of the iceberg, starting now.
The Tottenham Court Road.
So Kit Hesketh-Harvey kept going till the whistle went, gained an extra point, and with others in that round, he has leapt forward. He's now almost equal with Tony Hawks. He's 1 point behind him. He's a few ahead of Sue Perkins and Wendy Richard. That is the sequence, that is the order, as Sue starts the next round, which is My Gardening Tips. And I can say, Sue, you have 60 seconds. My Gardening Tips, starting now.
The best way to keep your garden uncluttered by weeds is to invest in US defoliant Agent Orange. This napalm-like substance can be dropped from around 10 feet onto your garden, ensuring that nothing grows either there or anywhere in your postcode for at least 10 decades. It's hard to come by, and admittedly, I had to sneak into a secret military installation to get hold of this gear, which strangely is not the colour of the fruit I mentioned.
Wendy Richard
Are you
challenge.
starting to hesitate, Sue?
She did hesitate
Darling,
at one point.
it was coming over the hill like a dribbering hesitant.
Right. So, Wendy, she did have a hesitation before she
it
decided...
hasn't happened yet, but...
No, it did happen when you were trying to find out which establishment you went to find your napalm.
Yes. No,
So,
she's right.
Wendy, you have 33 seconds for My Gardening Tips, starting now.
I don't have a very big garden, but I do love being out there as much as I can, never mind what size it is. One of my gardening tips is, when you're potting up plants...
Kit Hesketh-Harvey's challenge.
I'm sorry, I was saving her blushes because this is a national treasure and we don't want to know what size it is in her garden. Hesitation, Chairman.
No, I don't think she hesitated. I don't think so. She started to giggle, but she still kept going. Wendy, you've still got the subject.
You get told off here if you look miserable. You start to have a laugh and smile and giggle, and you get told off again.
No, you get extra points, Wendy.
Oh, extra points?
Extra points. That's what I put your way.
Yes, because of his challenge. You know how to bring the smile to a girl's face, don't you? Right, 22 seconds. My gardening tip still with you, Wendy, starting now.
When you're potting up your plants, put broken up eggshells in the bottom because this will crock the pot and it will help put calcium back into the soil. It's a very good one to remember that. Other gardening tips are, if you are dealing with slugs, good old-fashioned salt, that'll do the trick. Pour it down and watch them frizzle up.
So Wendy Richards speaking as the whistle went. And Wendy, congratulations, because not just talking the subject, you actually gave them some very good gardening tips there.
Wendy, can I ask, is there such a thing as
bra
crocking a
on.
pot?
What?
Is that real, crocking a pot?
Yes, with eggshells.
Yeah, but if you put the crocks at the bottom of a pot, some people say it's crocking a pot.
I found that very informative.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you don't bother about using broken bits of pot and china. Just put your eggshells in the bottom.
Right. And that crocks the pot for you?
Yeah.
Well, you can put a few crocks in as well, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, that's the whole point.
Look, we're not doing a gardening programme. This is not gardener's question time. It is just a minute. So, Wendy, well done. I congratulated you on the tips you gave because they were very succinct. And good. And you're still in fourth place, unfortunately. And Sue Perkins in third place, only just ahead of you. And then Kit Hesketh-Harvey followed one ahead by Tony Hawks. And Tony, they seem to give all the erudite subjects to you this week. Right. It's Icarus. Can you tell us something about Icarus in just a minute, starting now?
I know nearly as much about Icarus as I do acronyms. But what I am aware of is that his father was called Daedalus, and he was Greek. And they went out one day and put some wings on their arms, attaching it with wax in a very clever manner. They were very ingenious, those fellows. And then they jumped off a cliff and started to fly up towards the sun. But Icarus, what a fool he was! He went too close to that yellow, spheroid, hot thing. And what happened was that the stuff that was attached to his joint started to come away.
The audience showed their appreciation for the way you struggle not to repeat the word wax. Yes. But Sue, you got in first, right? And you have Icarus, and you have 21 seconds to go, starting now.
Daedalus the Greek was upset that his son had gone too close to the sun, S-O-N, and so S-U-N. What am I talking about? You have
Wendy
it now,
challenge.
are you
A
happy?
repetition of S and N, if nothing
No,
else.
it's Wendy actually challenged.
Oh, was
first.
it? I beg your pardon. Wendy, I'm sorry, my
Sorry,
dear.
sons. We got our sons. In
Yes,
the
we've got the
mother,
sons, but
didn't we?
we are dealing in the world of verbal imagery, so the sun, whether it's S-U-N or S-O-N, is sun, and that is repetition. So, Wendy, correct challenge. 15 seconds on Icarus, starting now.
Many years ago, there was a racehorse called Icarus, and I remember my mother putting £5 on it, and it lost. A clear case of being not too close to the sun, but certainly not close enough to the winning post.
All right, it's only challenge.
Close,
repetition of close.
Yes.
Too close.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Okay, Tony, 4 seconds. Icarus is back with you, starting now.
He plummeted towards the ground, tears in his eyes, unbelievable.
So Tony Hawk speaking as the whistle went gained another extra point, and he's still just in the lead of head of Kit Hesketh-Harvey, and then Sue Perkins and Wendy Richard in that order as we go into the final round. And Wendy Richard is turn to begin, and the subject is cheating.
Oh, no.
I know it's a nasty subject to finish on, but I'm sure you'll have some funny things to say about it. 60 seconds available, starting now.
I see no point in cheating when one is playing games. I enjoy playing crib, and it really drives me daft when people come up and look over your shoulder and go, "Oh, you're cheating again. I've got the cards up your sleeve." I mean, I really want to pick the board up and whack them one with it. Because what is the point? You enjoy the whole...
Kit Hesketh-Harvey.
An awful lot of enjoys, weren't there?
She did enjoy it before.
You see, that's the trouble with people. They hate to see me having a good time.
I'm sorry.
Oh, she knows how to win her audience. Kit, you've got a correct challenge. You have a point, of course. You have 41 seconds and cheating starting now.
There's a lovely story about a wedding rehearsal where the male fiancé slipped a tenner to the vicar and said, "Can you leave out the bit about loving and honouring?"
Wendy challenge.
Well, not only was it hesitation, but honestly, if you go into another one of those appalling jokes again... I mean, this is just a minute, not Variety Bandbox.
Variety Bandbox does date us a bit, Wendy. I mean, that does go back into the annals of the past. But
Well,
still...
you used to be on that, didn't you, Nicholas?
Absolutely.
I used to listen to it when I was in my pram.
So, right, Wendy. In spite of your cracks, it shows you how fair and generous I am. You had a correct challenge. You have the subject back. You have cheating. You have 33 seconds starting now.
Cheating at all sorts of games, such as cricket or tennis or...
Sue challenge.
Two oars.
Oh,
There were 3
that's
oars,
me,
actually.
Too many oars.
We let 2 go often, but 3 becomes repetition, which we don't allow. 27 seconds with you, Sue, on cheating starting now.
Cheat never prosper, goes the adage, and yet I think you'll find that most people who cheat manage to backpocket huge sums of cash.
Right. Tony, challenge?
It was a mistake. I thought she repeated cheat, which isn't on the card, cheating, but she said cheats. So, in fact...
She didn't repeat cheat. She said cheating and then cheat.
Yes, I'm actually saying that I've made an incorrect challenge.
Oh, right.
But Sue gets a point, and everybody's jolly happy.
You brought a very sombre note to the situation. They were all very tense for a moment, the audience. Right. Sue, you had an incorrect challenge, so you have the subject still. Another point, 21 seconds on cheating starting now.
Once upon a time, I tried to cheat by selling Saints relics. Oh, and then I did it. Then.
Now she has repeated cheat.
She has repeated. And Tony, you got the subject of cheating with 19 seconds to go starting now.
I saw some girls playing the card game Cheat on a train once, and one of them accused the others of cheating. And I thought this was an extraordinary concept, and had a bit of a lie down afterwards, because I was tired of having watched something quite so extraordinary in my...
Kit Hesketh-Harvey.
2 extraordinaries?
Yes.
Well, I think it was an extraordinary
right.
concept.
It was extraordinary before, and it's extraordinary that you've got him with 2 seconds to go on cheating starting now.
He turned to the vicar and said, "Would you possibly..."
Wendy challenged just before you got there.
He's done all that before. We're not having those sort of stories on
So
this
he did repeat the
programme.
vicar. So he did repeat the vicar.
He
So
did,
Wendy, yes, right.
yes.
You've got him with half a second to go on cheating, Wendy, starting now.
Cheating is a terrible...
So Wendy Richard brought that round to an end with a flourish, and also the show, because there's no more time to play just a minute. So let me tell you that in the final analysis, according to the points in front of me, Wendy Richard and Sue Perkins, the girls finished equal in third place. But they were only just behind Kit Hesketh-Harvey. And this happened last time we were in the drill hall. Somebody was one ahead of somebody else, and that was this time Tony Hawks. So, Tony, you're the winner this week. So it only remains for me to say thank you to these four keen and enthusiastic and flamboyant players of the game. Wendy Richard and Kit Hesketh-Harvey on my left, and Sue Perkins and Tony Hawks on my right. I also thank Lottie for the way she helped me keep the score and blow her whistle. We thank our producer, Claire Jones, who does such a marvellous job. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, which we all enjoy playing, and we are very grateful to our warm and hot and overheated audience here at the Drill Hall who've cheered us on our way. From our audience, from our panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye. Tune in.
And you can join Nicholas Parsons at the same time next week.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away once more, it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, and also to welcome to the show four highly talented, skilled, humorous, and regular players of the game, who've come together once more to give of their best as they try and talk on the subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those four people are sitting on my left, Paul Merton and Clement Freud, and sitting on my right, Ross Noble and Greg Proops. Would you please welcome all four of them? Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, and Claire's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the delightful Pleasance, which is on the fringe of the Edinburgh Festival in the year 2002, and we have a really hyped-up, excited, adrenaline festival fringe audience ready to give it their best as we start the show with Paul Merton. Paul, the subject, gosh no, why have they chosen this? I'm really nervous here. It's called The Chairman's Darkest Secret. I didn't know that was coming up any more than they did. But, Paul, will you talk on the subject starting now?
Nicholas, or as close friends know him, Susan, is the first transsexual to successfully host a panel show in this country. Looking at him now, it's hard to believe, but yes, he used to be a man. The transformation is extraordinary. As he wafts through Edinburgh, the scented air behind him, the various wisps of pillow cases hanging around his ears, as he's come from the hotel where he is feted and starred in many productions in the bar. They know him there as Lily, because he can't use his own real name. As they see a stiletto heel print on the carpet, they look knowingly towards one another. They say, he has been here, who was once a she, and has now become a he again.
Well, in spite of all the libelous things you said, they enjoyed it and you deserved your round of applause. But Clement, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
No, I don't know about that. I think there were other faults, but I don't think he hesitated. I thought
he said, he.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
I have a speech defect.
Clement, you have a correct challenge. You get a point for that, of course, and you take over the subject of the chairman's darkest secret, and there are 14 seconds available starting now.
Darkest. I think the chairman's darkest secret is the goat which he keeps in a house behind number 14 Ashfiddlers.
Paul Merton challenge.
That's no secret. We all know about that. I've watched it more times than I can remember. Poor devil.
Paul, we give you a bonus point for that. But Clement was interrupted, so he gets a point for that, and he keeps the subject of the chairman's darkest secret, and there are only 3 seconds left, thank goodness, starting now.
It is a nanny. There's nothing queer about the chairman.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion was Clement Freud, so naturally he has got a lead at the end of that round. Paul Merton follows him, and then Ross Noble and Greg proves. The next subject is, I'm sure it's been, I'd like you to take it actually, Greg. It's been chosen specially for you because we don't get many Americans on the show, and we're delighted to welcome one on again. And the subject is my accent. Will you tell us something about my accent, starting now?
My accent is an impenetrable, indecipherable, incalculable, unplaceable accent. I come from California, but originally I'm from nasal land. My mother is from Mississippi, so she tends to speak with a long, drawn-out drawl and say things like, "It scared the peduncle out of me." This is a colloquialism that I've never understood, no matter how many times my mother said it in her own...
And Ross Noble challenge.
Was that repetition of mother?
Yes, you repeated your mother too often.
Whoa, you talking about my mother, Nicholas? A little early for that.
You brought her into it and you repeated it, I'm afraid. You can't do that within the rules of just a minute. So, Ross, good to hear from you. You have a correct challenge, a point, of course. 32 seconds. And now you tell us something about your accent. My accent, starting now.
Well, for those of you listening on the World Service that don't know England, my accent is the poshest in all of the land. That's right. This is what people who are really at the top of their profession sound like. The lords and ladies swanning around the garden parties. Why, I, Your Majesty, will be heard ringing across the place. I'd very much like to enjoy one of your champion Ferrero Rocher. Possibly. You may even hear the beautiful refrain of, "Ooh, Ambassador, with these pork pies."
Well, Ross, they certainly enjoyed that. The image you created was wonderful. And you were speaking as a whistle when you gain an extra point for that. You're in second place behind Clement Freud as we move into the next round, which, Ross, it's actually your turn to begin. And, oh, this is interesting. It says how to deal with a bully. I don't know whether you get many of those in your audience up here at the Fringe, but tell us how you deal with them on that subject, starting now.
I was a big fan of the popular game show Bullseye when it was on in the 80s, and their little character that would appear on the said show was, in fact, Bully the Bull.
Greg, challenged.
Repetition? I believe Ross said the word show twice.
He did say the word show twice. Well, listen, Greg.
You're good.
Yeah. So you got your first point, Greg, and you've got a subject. You've got 51 seconds. You tell us something about how to deal with a bully.
Being as I was 4'11" until the age of 16, I had experience with bullies in my life. Wearing spectacles and having a smart mouth led me into many situations where I was dangled over toilets and hung over lines. Being butt-dragged across the lawn was a distinct American pleasure that bullies entertain younger, smaller children with in the United States of America. Growing up, I was able to gather... Yes.
Yes. Paul, you challenged.
There was a bit of hesitation.
There was a bit of hesitation. You erred there.
Oh, that was dramatic emphasis.
It was dramatic.
No one knew what was coming next, and I wanted to increase the suspense.
But unfortunately, you can't do that in just a minute because those are the rules. And you did... Actually, I don't think it was much suspense, actually, but...
Why don't we trade places and I'll sit there?
When I came on your radio show recently, you were rude enough to me.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Fair play.
No, it was just fun. My mobile went off in the middle of his show, actually.
Somebody phoned you?
Yeah.
He has himself on redial.
Paul, you have a correct challenge, and you have 23 seconds available to tell us something about how to deal with a bully, starting now.
Shoot them is a good way. Another way is perhaps that's 3 ways.
Clement Freud challenge.
That was 2 ways.
And you've got the subject of how to deal with a bully, and 19 seconds starting now.
You get your hockey stick and approach another player of the same game who has a similar implement in his hand.
Paul challenged.
Sorry, was I challenged for this?
Clement was interrupted. He gets a point for that. He keeps the subject, how to deal with a bully, Clement, and our 12 seconds starting now.
You lie down and pretend you're dead. They tend to go away and bully someone else, which is far preferable to being accosted or assailed by larger, heavier, stronger people.
Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's increased his lead at the end of that round. And he also begins the next round. So I don't know, somebody wrote to me about this, but it's not an advantage always to begin, because you've got to keep going for 60 seconds. Unless you're challenged, and it's an incorrect challenge, you're less likely to make points when you start than when you don't start with the subject.
That's fascinating.
Yes, well, I didn't want to answer. No, I didn't want to answer the letter, so I've done it over here. Right. Clement, the subject now is fudge. Will you tell us something about fudge in this game, starting now?
As if you are the first speaker, you don't get any points unless you fudge it. I thought I would start fudging this particular subject and talk about condensed milk, which is a hugely important...
Paul challenged.
Well, it's a sudden death, really.
It's the first... If you begin a subject, you don't get a lot of points.
Is that right?
So he was illustrating that, but in the process he lost the subject because it was a correct challenge of hesitation, and you have 43 seconds to tell us something about fudge, Paul, starting now.
Politicians are often accused of fudging the issue, aren't they? You say to one of them, what time is it? And they say, well, I suppose it...
Clement, challenge.
You see, now you get a point. Repetition of say.
That's right, he did say twice. So, Clement, you've got a point. You're illustrating my point that I made at the beginning, and fudge is still is back with you. 37 seconds, starting now.
Fruit, flavours, substances...
Paul Challenge.
That doesn't make any sense. Fruit flavours, what does that mean?
I think he was going to go on...
Just wait.
Oh, wait. How long should you wait for? Over a minute?
No, to be fair, he hadn't really got going. I mean...
Is it all right if Greg and I just go for a sandwich?
All this talk about fudge has got us snackable.
Right. So, he didn't really get going. Clement, another point. 34 seconds, starting now.
A sugar thermometer is pretty important, and condensed milk.
Ross challenge.
Sorry, I thought he was hesitating there, just at the idea of a sugar thermometer. Sort of bamboozled himself, like, whoa. Sugar thermometer.
Well,
Wouldn't it melt?
What's that?
Wouldn't it melt?
I don't know. I think there was a slight hesitation, Ross. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say you have the subject of fudge, and 30 seconds, starting now.
Fudge, those tiny little lovely sticky bricks. Often I buy them and build little houses out of them and lick the tops of them in a... I'll just buzz me. I mean, I clearly don't.
So, Paul, you challenge.
It was a desperate cry for help.
Right. And you answered it. Hesitation, 19 seconds. Fudge with you, Paul, starting now.
If you want to make really good fudge, the first and perhaps the most important ingredient is condensed milk. What you have...
Ross challenge.
What about the sugar thermometer?
No. Overrated. It's not an ingredient.
It's more of a utensil, isn't it?
It's not one of those sweets that takes your temperature as you eat it. It's not one of those.
So, is there a sweet that takes your
There is, yes.
Really?
What's that one?
Yes, what is that?
Well, it's not on the subject, so...
Well, since we have a minute...
No. Paul, you have 12 seconds and another point. Fudge is still with you, starting now.
When I was 7 years old, undoubtedly my favourite foodstuff was fudge. I couldn't wait. Every Friday when I came home from school, my mother would lay it on the table and she'd say, "Get stuck in, son. That's the best fudge you'll ever eat."
Paul Merton, speaking as a whistle and gain an extra point, and he's moved forward. He's 1 point behind our leader, Clement Freud, and Ross Noble and Greg Prue, so trailing in that order. And, Greg, it's your turn to begin, yes? The Scottish diet. That is the subject. 60 seconds, starting now.
Chips.
And Paul, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, you
I
went...
was going somewhere with that.
Yeah. You went for your laugh, you got it, and retired. Right. Paul got in first, and there are 58 seconds on the Scottish diet, Paul, starting now.
Well, there are more incidents of heart disease in Scotland than anywhere else in Western Europe, which is a bit of a shame, really. I think it's got something to do with the fact that if it's not deep-fried, it can't be food. There is an element, though, which is say this is changing, and if you walk round the streets of Edinburgh, you can see gay little cafes springing up that offer were honest, decent people, a good time food-wise. That's another strange way of saying something to eat. I don't know why I said it like that, but I did, and I can't go back on it because that would be repetition.
Clement Freud challenge.
He could have gone back on it.
Well, he could have done, but he didn't. No, it's just a devious thought. He wasn't deviating within the rules of just a minute.
He was deviating from the rules of just a minute.
No, he has the benefit of the doubt, definitely. And 30 seconds. Tell us more about the Scottish diet, Paul, starting now.
But fresh fish in the morning, kippers lying on your plate, sometimes, if they're cooked very, very slowly.
Yes.
I thought that could have been repetition.
Oh, you're so quick, Clement. I don't know how to keep up with you. It was repetition of very, and you have 23 seconds. Tell us something about the Scottish diet, starting now.
I think we've heard so much about the Scottish diet that I would tell you my favourite chat-up line is when somebody says, you mustn't.
I think he hesitated and deviated at exactly the same time.
He did, but which
one? But we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Do we each get to chair our own individual game?
You can demand points, as Clement's just done. It was very funny, but he did hesitate, and you've got the subject, Ross, and a point, of course, of the Scottish diet, starting now.
The Scottish people really do love to eat bits of organ straight from the animal itself. The ultimate dish here in this fine tartan land would be licking a pig's face, not even bothering to...
So, Ross Noble's moved forward. He's still in third place, just ahead of Greg Proops. And Paul Merton and Clement Freud are now equal in the lead. Ross, it's your turn to begin. Something which I think is a subject you probably know a great deal about up here at the Fringe. A full house. You've experienced that nearly every night, I'm sure. But talk on the subject starting now.
I very much have a full house because I have an inability to walk past any shop without buying everything in there. My particular place of residence is filled with absolute junk. I have angle grinders, flip charts. I also own many different welding pieces of equipment, large steel chickens which I've placed hats upon that I got in Mallorca. There was a large Mexican donkey which was...
Greg, you challenge.
I think it was a large chicken and a large donkey.
Oh, you're right.
He did, that's right. It was large. Well, listen. Ooh.
I should have said larger, shouldn't I?
Really? Yeah, larger. Yeah, even
strictly
larger.
Speaking,
yes.
the donkey is bigger than the chicken.
Right.
I'm a fool to myself, really.
More of a philosophical conundrum, I would think.
Yeah.
If I could say it.
Greg, you had a correct challenge.
Yes, fantastic.
Right. I know it is. Yes, and you have the subject. And a point. A full house is with you starting now.
A full house is, of course, what every performer who comes to the Fringe wants, expects, needs, and enjoys. However, often you'll find that when you go out in front of the audience, there's two people there, and one of them is making a phone call. At that point, you realize that you mustn't dwell on the fact that you haven't a full house, but must give it your all. You've got to get out there and tell your jokes one after the next, or if you're me, tell your jokes from years...
Clement challenge.
2 jokes.
There are too many jokes, I'm afraid.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I crowding the show with humor?
I'll give you a bonus for that last one. You got a round of applause.
Thank you, since the monologue had nothing.
Yes. Put you equal Ross in third place. But Clement gets a point for a correct challenge, and he has 8 seconds, a full house starting now.
When I have a full house, I used to tell them my favourite chat-up line, which is somebody saying to me, "Will you come upstairs and make love to me?" And I would say, I can no longer do both.
So give Clement the point for speaking when the whistle went, and that bonus point which he's been fighting for all along. and he's increased his lead at the end of the round. And the next subject, Paul, is for you to start, and it is Highland Games. Tell us something about that very Scottish subject in this game, starting now.
There are many wonderful traditional games played in the Highlands, for example, tossing the bullock, hunting the neeps and tatties. These are various pastimes that have been handed down from father to son over generations. And it's a marvellous sight to see these brawny men standing...
Ross, challenge.
Brawny?
Yeah. Brawny, yes.
Is that a lot? Oh, yeah,
yes.
I was thinking of... Yeah, sorry.
Have you gone, Ross?
Yeah, no, because I thought it was like men with brawn and scrawny, and he'd combined the two.
I don't know where we go from there. I'm lost. Paul, an incorrect challenge. Another point. 44 seconds. Tell us more about Highland games, starting now.
Grouse hunting could be classed as a Highland game as well, I suppose.
Clement, challenge.
No, it couldn't.
Yes, it could. It might be wrong, but it could be classed. You can class an egg as a chicken, but you might be wrong, but you can class it.
That is an argument, but if we actually had that argument all the time in just a minute, we'd never get anywhere.
We'd never get anywhere, Nicholas.
No, that's right. And they do grouse shoot in places outside of Scotland, so I think we have to give Clement the benefit of the doubt, which he loves to do. And say, Clement, you have 41 seconds. Tell us something about Highland Games, starting now.
I received a letter the other day from the Ross and Cromarty Caber Tossing Association saying that in view of my advanced age, I should take part in the hop, step and jump for over 75s. I said pole vault is the sport for me. And ever since, I have been trying this extraordinary athletic pursuit of running down a runway, a causeway. I said run and cause and way.
I know, but they enjoy
They're
what
hyphenated.
You know,
You're quite right.
Anyway,
words,
Paul, you challenged.
Yes, he said run and way and cause twice.
They're hyphenated words. The only repetition was the hyphen.
Actually, I thought they were. I didn't think that it was a hyphen. I don't think people put the hyphen in nowadays. So really,
no, not anymore. Not since we joined Europe.
No.
But I get challenged because I say grouse hunting is an island game, and you say you give him the benefit. Then he starts talking about pole vaulting.
I know, but he did pause.
Did he pause?
Yes. And I think you shall have the benefit of the doubt on this.
There, see? It all works out in the end, doesn't it?
It all works out evenly in the end. I have to try and be fair. Highland Games, 12 seconds, Paul, starting now.
Undoubtedly, the highlight of any Highland game is when all the competitors stand in the middle of the circle, they look at each other, and they speak these words. They say...
What timing, eh? So, Paul, you've got an extra point again, and you move forward. You're two ahead of Clement. Freud, and what do they say? Were you going to say something, or were you just timing it for dramatic effect?
I was timing it for dramatic effect,
Well
Nicholas.
done, well.
I could see the whistle out the corner of my eye.
So you see the way they play the game, listeners. I have to point these things out to her. If Claire puts the whistle up a little early, they slow down. If she puts it up late, anyway, it doesn't really matter. Greg, it's your turn to begin. And after that, the subject is small talk.
Interesting.
Yes, interesting. Well, will you tell us something about that subject of small talk in this game, starting now?
People always come up to me and mention different various topics. For instance, lately I've heard that Elvis Presley was Scottish. His original name was Elvis Prescott, and...
Paul challenge.
A repetition of Elvis.
Of Elvis.
Hey, man, I'm talking about the king. You mean I don't get to repeat that?
No. Right, Paul, a correct challenge. And 49 seconds. Small talk starting now.
Small talk is the sort of thing that I'm very bad at. I can't stick small talk. I never know what to say. If you're going to say so. As I've demonstrated.
Clement, yes. Say, right, small talks with you, Clement. And there are 42 seconds starting now.
Does your mother take in washing? Has she sold her mangle? What's become of the old piano your sister used to strangle? Has your father plenty of work? Does he still get booze too? Tell me all the particulars and stay as long as you used to. Was the Victorian music hall song, which I think epitomized small talk. But what Paul was saying, I made a lot of it.
Paul, you challenge.
Well, hesitation, sadly.
Yeah, we interpret as hesitation, yes.
Yeah.
So, Paul, you have the subject back.
I thought that was his name.
All right. You have 18 seconds on small talk starting now.
What a lot of weather we've been having lately, I suppose, is the ultimate of small talk when you meet a stranger somewhere and you're thinking, how can we pass the time? Perhaps there is something in common. What could it be? I know we'll talk about what we have above us in the...
Clement challenge.
4 watts.
1, yes.
4 watts?
What?
Enough for almost enough for a small light bulb. Am I being challenged on a small word like what?
Well, if you say... Often they let it go, you only repeat it once.
They?
But you did repeat it more than once.
Did I?
Yes. And Clement not only has the subject, but he has any benefit that's going. And 2 seconds available, Clement. Small talk starting now.
The new laundrette is opening at the corner.
I have to tell you we're moving... Oh, let me give you the score at the end of that round, which is that Paul is just 1 point ahead of Clement Freud, and the other two are trailing them a little. Greg Proops and Ross Noble equal. And we're moving into the final round. And, Ross, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is slogans. Tell us something about slogans in just a minute, starting now.
One of the most famous slogans ever would be "Make love, not war," which led to quite a lot of amorous servicemen going into battle and trying it on with the enemy. They'd come out wearing fancy clothing, maybe stockings and suspenders. "Hey, how's it going, you crazy kids?" they'd say as they started to gently writhe around in the trenches, possibly performing some sort of novel dance or even some sort of erotic movement. That would be.
Paul challenge.
Sadly, repetition of some sort.
Yeah, there was some sort there, I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Yes,
yep,
fair enough.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So you went for... Oh, my goodness me, yes, you went for 22 seconds.
Blimey.
Yes. Sorry, I've got it wrong.
Hugely impressive,
42.
is it?
Sorry.
42 seconds.
Yeah, I
well,
had to
that's
subtract.
impressive. I thought, hang on a second.
Yes, no. Wait,
22 seconds.
No, you went for 32 seconds.
Do I hear 12?
Yes.
Any advance on that?
I don't mind telling you, I'm now frightened and confused.
So Greg is now comforting Ross, but Paul, you had a correct challenge, and you have 28 seconds for slogans starting now.
A lot of slogans that we're familiar with these days spring from the advertising industry. "Go to work on an egg" was a very popular slogan in the 1960s, created by that woman novelist Fay Weldon when she was working as a copywriter. Not perhaps an interesting fact, but nevertheless a true one. The slogan that I live my life by is this: if you can be kind, honest, sincere, and you can fake all those elements, you have a career in show business.
Right. What a note on which to finish just a minute. So we finished the show. As I said, there was to be the last round, so let me give you the final situation. Always emphasising, as I like to, that it's the contribution they make and not the points they win. Which I'm sure you agree, but they are keen to get their points. So let me tell you that Greg Proops and Ross Noble were equal in third place. In second place was Clement Freud, and he was 3 points behind Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, you are the winner this week. Paul Merton. So it only remains for me to say a special thank you to these 4 delightful, clever and humorous players of the game: Paul Merton, Ross Noble, Greg Proops and Clement Freud. I also thank Claire Bartlett, who has helped me with the score and blown her whistle so elegantly when the 60 seconds was up. And we thank also our producer-director, Claire Jones, who does such a marvellous job. And we're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game. And we are thankful to this lovely audience here at the Fringe, at the Pleasance, during the festival of 2002, who have been so warm and generous in their reaction. From them, from me, Nicholas Parsons and our team, goodbye till the next time we play Just a Minute!
And you can tune in the same time next week for the last programme in the series, when Nicholas Parsons is joined by...
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my infinite pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world. And also to welcome back the inventive and original humour of Paul Merton, the offbeat and sometimes surreal humour of Not Ross Noble, and the clever and succinct humour of Clement Freud. And we welcome also for the first time on the show someone who's equally talented and entertaining comedian, that is Sean Locke. But would you please welcome all four of them? And as usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the delightful Pleasance, which is on the fringe of the Edinburgh Festival. And we have a wonderful, highly hyped up, excited, fringe audience in front of us. Yeah, ready to cheer us on our way. Who've been queuing all morning to get in here, so they're really ready for it. So, Clement, we'll begin again with you, and the subject here in front of me is, very Scottish, how to play the bagpipes. Clement, can you tell us something about how to play the bagpipes in this game starting now?
In a word, quietly. I think it is hugely important to remember that you don't always have to blow. If you're the sort of person who runs out of puff, you can do what they do in the lowlands, in Roxburgh, Selkirk, Peebles, Shields, Dumfries, and that is get bagpipes which you activate by waving your arm up and down and having the bag itself close to your side arm.
Paul Merton challenge.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation,
Slight.
yes. But, I mean, the demonstration, I should explain to our listeners, was really holding our audience spellbound as Clement demonstrated sort of arm movements there, which...
I've never done it on Radio 4 before. I went very well on Radio 2.
They still talk about it, don't they? They still talk about it.
Well, maybe you'll get the full lot and do it on Radio 1 sometime. And Paul, he did hesitate, so that's a correct challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject, and there are 30 seconds available. How to play the bagpipes starting now.
It's quite a difficult technique, but it can perhaps best be summarised as first you squeeze, then pump, then blow. I'll just repeat that. Well, I won't, because I actually can't because of the rules of this game. But imagine if you had a set of bagpipes under your arm and you see a stir in sight, because after all, it is an instrument to stir up the emotions. You feel the blood coursing through your veins and you think, my God, it can't last much longer. But it does. And what a sound it is as that bagpipes...
Ross Noble challenge.
Was it repetition of sound?
Yes, there was. There was a sound on it. Yes, definitely, Paul. I'm sorry. So the ones who wanted to hear more on sympathy for Paul, because he's Ross's challenge with just 1 second to go.
Well, it had better be good.
So you have a point, of course, for a correct challenge, Ross. You take over the subject. 1 second. How to play the bagpipes starting now.
Bagpipes. What a marvellous bagpipe.
Whoever speaks when the whistle is going in this game gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Ross Noble. And you won't be surprised to hear that he's in the lead at the end of that round. Well, don't clap as much as that. We haven't just started. I mean, he's got 2 points, Paul's got 1, and the others have yet to score. In fact, Sean has yet to speak. But,
Don't rub it in.
Yeah. Well, no, he's spoken now.
He's yet to speak in the game, not ever.
I know.
It's not fair.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that.
You said you'd go easy on me, Nicholas, back there. Don't worry, son, you were massaging me.
I was trying to bring you in, you see, like that, so you would say something. You've now established your presence.
I don't know anything about the bagpipes. That was basically my problem.
Well, you don't have to speak on unless you challenge and get the subject.
Okay.
You don't have to
Ignorance
contribute.
is no bar to success in this game.
No. But you've established you've established your presence in the show now, which is great, Sean. And Ross, it's your turn to begin, and the subject in front of me is trichology. looking at your wayward locks. I don't know whether that's been chosen specially for you, but talk on the subject if you can. 60 seconds starting now.
You wouldn't actually believe it, but I am in fact a bald man. Yes, I have indulged in trichology, or as I like to call it, slaphead maintenance. It's a little bit like the quick fit of the baldy type event, and little men can come on. You just think of it. Oh, just bug me.
Sean, you challenged.
Yes, well, he was just hesitating all over the place.
He was hesitating, yes. Your first correct challenge, your first point.
Ooh.
So gather your emotional strength and go with 42 seconds if you can on the subject of trichology starting now.
Trichology, as I understand it, is a study of hair. And I've always fancied being a trichologist because it means you get the afternoons off, because there's obviously not a lot to do, is there? You could study hair for about 2 hours and then your eyes would start blurring over and you think, I'm fed up with this, I'm going out to just look at some other stuff apart from hair. Now, what...
Full challenge.
A repetition of hair.
Yes, I'm afraid you let the first one go, but there were 3 hairs, actually. So, so well, a new boy, they're generous. Anyway, Paul... you have trichology. You have a point, of course, and you have 25 seconds starting now.
I'm actually a donor for a bald man. I'm growing hair for his particular top of his head because, as you can see, if you are here in the radio audience, I have become the new Harold Shipman. There's something about my appearance I want to be able to tap in. There's a new film being made, the early years.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of new.
Yes, you had new before, I'm sorry.
What nonsense.
You did
a little word like new.
Yeah. The new Harold Shipman and the other new so forth. I must explain to our listeners, because our audience can see, Paul has grown a beard, which he doesn't normally have, and actually there is a passing resemblance to Harold Shipman.
I'm hoping to get the part in the musical.
I know, that's right. Yeah. When's the audition?
Well, you're not getting in on it, don't worry about that.
Clement, you had a correct challenge, so you have 7 seconds to tell us something about trichology starting now.
I'm rather against all these philological euphemisms where if you're bald, people say he's lost a lot of...
So, Clement Freud was speaking as the whistle went, then gained that extra point, and now he, Ross Noble and Paul Merton are equal with 2 points, and Sean Locke has 1 point. So it's very close, isn't it? Could you care less? Anyway. Sean, will you take the next round? The subject is neighbours. Can you tell us something about neighbours in this game starting now?
Yeah, I think it was Jesus who said, love thy neighbour, which was very easy for him because he moved about a lot. And he was also Jesus, so he's meant to love his neighbour.
Yes, Ross challenged you.
So it was repetition of Jesus.
Oh.
I know. It's a difficult game, isn't it? Yes.
But he's worth repeating.
Yes. But he's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, isn't he? So strictly speaking, you're allowed to mention him 3 times before you.
Ross got a correct challenge, a point for him. Neighbours is with you, 50 seconds to go, starting now.
I'm a big fan of the Australian soap opera Neighbours, and I recently visited the actual set of said show. It really is brilliant. I thank you indeed for the kind woos that you gave me there. I played cricket in the street as a tribute to the original opening credits. Unfortunately, in the actual show, there was never a transition.
Yes, all right, I just say yes. I don't want to discourage you, Sean, but and I say yes. What was your challenge?
I'm learning. His repetition. He repeated the word show.
He did repeat the word show. Well, listen, yes, Sean, you got in there. My gosh, you're in the lead now. No, you're not. Almost. You've got 30 seconds. Tell us something.
You're treating me like your bitch, aren't you? You're in the lead. You're not. You've spoken, haven't? So. I don't know where I stand, Nicholas.
Well, you're sitting, actually, but, I mean... no, I'm trying to encourage you, actually, Sean, and you have, 30 seconds on Neighbours starting now. Clement, you challenged.
I wanted him to have another point.
Yes. I think what Clement's saying is you hesitated very, very long time and didn't get going, so he challenged for that pause, but he's said he's not going to accept it, he's going to give it to you.
Wow, thank you.
There we are. It's But this time when I say now, you do have to start right away.
Okay, right.
Right, okay. So there are now 20... It was 2 seconds you didn't say anything. Which can't happen. It's all right in real life, you can go for 2 seconds. Not in just a minute. Sean, Neighbours is still with you. 28 seconds, starting now.
The theme tune of the show Ross was talking about is Everybody Needs Good Neighbours. Well, that's not true if you're an Eskimo. You don't need good neighbours, do you?
Clement challenge.
I think repetition.
Of good. Yes.
Right. I think I need to go on a course, don't I?
This is the course. None of us have got off it. We don't know what the next bit is. God knows what hell awaits us.
Clement, you have 22 seconds. The subject is Neighbours, starting now.
There are streets in which the numbers are odd on one side of the road, like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, whereas on the other they are even. 2, 4, 6, 8 spring readily to mind. And neighbours are those next door. Just go out of your house.
So Clement Freud, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's one ahead of the others. And Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is locks. Tell us something about that subject in this game. Starting now.
When I was younger, I always believed there was such a thing as the Loch Ness Monster, and I'm very disappointed it's never been found. I wonder if Nessie is out there somewhere, swimming around beneath the surface, which is the best way to swim. And it could be found perhaps one day. The Norwegians have sent a submarine down there, and sometimes they put a man inside it, and he looks out of the portholes, and he comes back with a terrible report. Nothing, I can't see a thing. There are other...
Clement challenge.
You wouldn't say that if you were Norwegian.
He's bilingual. Well, he's bilingual.
But actually,
He works for a Scottish team, but he's Norwegian.
But actually, the Norwegians speak some of the best English in the whole of the world.
That's right. You know that. You'll be big in Norway, aren't you, Nicholas?
Yeah, absolutely. My pop record was number 3 in the hit parade over there.
You made a pop record?
Yes. It's called Fantasy.
I think we're wandering into the middle of one now. So when was that?
It came out last year, and it was a sort of dance record. They've been telling me I should take it to Ibiza. I could clean up over there.
You could clean up in Ibiza.
Oh, I see.
If you keep producing records.
Oh, they didn't mean financially. They thought I could go over there and
just cleaning up.
Oh, I see.
How did this record go? The Norwegians grasped it to their bosom. How did it go?
Well, it sort of said, I want to be your fantasy. And then we went into the beat, you know, and she went, you my fantasy, and I went, yes. Oh, God, come, you're strong. I wish I'd done that last year up at the Edinburgh Festival when it first came out. I might have sold a few more records, actually. This country. So, actually, the Norwegians speak very, very good English, so they could have said that. But, Clement, they enjoyed your challenge because it was very apt and clever, so we give you a bonus point. But Paul was interrupted, so he gets a point, and he keeps the subject. 33 seconds, locks, starting now.
I remember moving into a new bedsit, and because it was brand spanking newish to me, I had put the keys somewhere where I couldn't find them. And when I came out of my bedroom at about 4:30 in the morning and I wanted to visit the loo, I took the wrong turn in and found myself outside the front door with no keys, stark naked. I was there for about 7 weeks. It's unbelievable, isn't it? The only thing that kept me going was a copy of Nicholas Parsons' record, Fantasy, which I don't know if you know, it's an enormous hit. Some countries, overseas, not here, of course, because nobody would buy it here. But it was a wonderful, brilliant tribute.
So, Paul Merton speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now one behind Clement Freud, our leader, and 1 point ahead of the other two. Ross, it's your turn to begin. We've already talked about the Loch Ness, but now the subject actually is Nessie. So will you tell us something about Nessie in this game starting now?
Sometimes when the Untouchables were being over-familiar, they would refer to their boss as Nessie. Of course, his real name was Elliot Ness, but, you know, they'd come in there, "Oi, Nessie, get us a cup of tea," and that used to drive him mad. He'd send them off on errands that, quite frankly, wasn't becoming of their crime-fighting status. They'd be pouring sugar into hot beverages instead of running around the back streets trying to find Al Capone and all of the other gangster types. They would enjoy a hot soup occasionally instead of going off and checking through important criminal records. They would sometimes be forced to eat quiche for hours instead of...
Paul, you challenge.
It was a hesitation.
I'm afraid there was a hesitation, yeah. But you went so well for 44 seconds. But that is the irony of this game. You can go for 44 seconds and entertain the audience, but don't get any points at all. If someone interrupts you and has a correct challenge, which was Paul, and he has, therefore, 16 seconds to tell us something about Nessie starting now.
When I was younger, I used to believe that Nessie existed there in Loch Ness. I believe sometimes they send down a
Repetition.
Yes,
I believe.
That's right. You did. Well, listen, Sean, you've got another point, and you have 11 seconds on Nessie starting now.
If the Loch Ness Monster does exist, then why haven't we found him? It's plain...
Clement challenge.
I don't know.
All right, so Clement comes in with these apt remarks, which I said at the beginning, which get a round of applause, so I usually say, right, bonus point to Clement. You were interrupted, Sean, so you get a point for that. Ooh. You keep the subject, and you have 6 seconds still on Nessie, starting now.
As I would believe most people wanted to find a Loch Ness Monster.
Ross, challenge.
Repetition of Loch.
Oh, that's right, because the subject is Nessie.
Yeah. Oh, this is good.
It's so different. We had Loch.
Shall I
you
just,
won it, don't you?
Shall I just go?
Because we had Locke before, and Sean Locke is talking, and...
you know what? I feel wrong and cheap, and...
But you're playing within the rules of the game, and that's what it's all about. So, Ross, you've got in. I don't want to rub this in, but there's 1 second to go. But it is the game. And Ness is with you, Ross. 1 second, starting now.
Nessie,
So Ross was speaking then when there was a Wayne gained that extra point. He's in third place just behind Paul Merton and Clement Freud ahead, and Sean Locke 1 point behind him. And Sean, your turn to begin. The subject is plates. Tell us something about plates in this game, starting now.
Plates, whether they're tectonic or ceramic. You can't live with them or without them.
I think that was wonderful, I really do, you know. I think we can live without plates.
You can't have a tectonic plate in the house, it's too big.
Right. Anyway, what was Ross's challenge?
I can't remember now. I think...
he did hesitate. Yes.
Yeah, and also a repetition of them as well, if you want.
That's right. And you can't live with them or without them, yes. Yeah. So, Ross, tell us something about plates, and there are 50 cc's? Right, you get me such a state. 53 seconds available. Plates starting now.
Plates are often found in the head of old war veterans who have had part of their skull blown off, and they are placed in there, usually made out of steel. In the old days, of course, it would be Bakelite.
It was a repetition of old.
That's right. Yep. Well done. Well, listen, Sean.
I'm glad you buzzed.
You're really getting the hang of the game, Sean. So you've got another point, and you've got 40 seconds. Tell us now something about plates, starting now.
It's a very British sound, the grim cheer that goes up when someone drops a plate in a restaurant. As if everyone...
Paul, challenge.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation, but he hasn't played the game before, so I think we'll give the benefit of the doubt to him. But don't pause quite as long again. That's all.
Oh, sorry.
I was
trying to put a bit of drama into it.
Yes, a little bit more passion and drama.
Okay.
33 seconds plates starting now.
It's as if we're saying, hooray, someone's messed up. It wasn't me. What a relief. In other countries, they don't behave like this. In France, for example, they're very mature about it. Someone drops a plate, it may...
Ross, challenge.
Repetition of plate.
Yes, because the subject is plates. The extra reaction there from our audience, which I should explain to the listeners, is because Ross felt that it wasn't a popular challenge and he got up and left. But fortunately he has returned, and after all, I have to tell our audience, he is playing the game. And that's what it's about. You may have sympathy for Sean Locke, who engages you so much, but a correct challenge, Ross, and you have 23 seconds on plates starting now.
I'd like to get my plates and throw them around, pretending to be Greek. That's right. I have no ancestral link to that particular country, but I just enjoy smashing things. Occasionally, I'll throw them at my family members, which is handy because they're all jugglers, and they catch their served crockery and get a stick, and they spin the plates on the top like that.
So Ross Noble got points in the round, including one for speaking as the whistle went, and he has leapt forward, literally. He's one ahead of Paul Merton, and only one behind Clement Freud, and two ahead of Sean Locke. That's the order, if you're interested in points. Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the 7 C's. Tell us something about the 7 C's, starting now.
Well, there used to be 5, and then that was decided that wasn't enough, and so another 2 were added, making a grand total of 7. I have sailed all of the 7 C's in the last 4 weeks. I was sponsored by a record company who want to make a follow-up to Nicholas's marvellous dance track called Fantasy, but they need to get the money together because apparently the last release, well, it wasn't so much released as escaped.
Clement, it sounds.
I thought he said released twice, but I think it was released.
Yes. Release and released, yeah.
That's right. I'm
clever
sorry,
little ruse, that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to have given it away, Clement, because I don't know what he's going to say next, but he has an incorrect challenge to a point. So the 7 C's are still with you, Paul. 31 seconds, starting now.
A long time ago, many years from now, perhaps I'm going back as...
Ross, challenge.
Does that work in space and time?
So I was going backwards. Is that confusing?
Yes, it did confuse me, yes. I like to live in the present and the future. I'm sorry.
Many years ago, surely.
Yeah, but that's another way of putting it. But actually,
I mean, that's a very, very strict understanding of the English language. Are we not to allow a bit of flowery sort of...
No, I'm with you. I've got the sense of it now.
Oh, have you?
Yes.
That's only because you were around at the time.
I know. I think it's a little bit of what they call grammatically tautology, but it did make sense after I paused and thought about it.
Yeah.
I have to think about so many other things to show that one escaped me for a moment. But so, Ross, I'm afraid it was an incorrect challenge. So, Paul, you still have the subject of the 7 C's, and there are 31 seconds starting now.
If you want to go through the 7 C's, you must first of all build yourself a solid boat. Perhaps the best boats in the world.
Clement, challenge.
Hesitation.
Oh, no.
Yes, he got out of boat and boats, and then he hesitated. Yes, Clement, I think you're right. Hesitation.
What? I hesitated after he buzzed.
Oh. I tell you what I do. As there seems some discrepancy and in the audience about this, I will let them be the final judge. All right, if you agree with the challenge of hesitation, you cheer. If you disagree, you boo, and you do it all together. Now. I think it's quite conclusive. Paul, you have another point, and you have 23 seconds. The 7 C's starting now.
Of all the 7 C's, undoubtedly my favourite is the Red Sea. What a wonderful body of water that is. I can still remember very clearly, as if it was yesterday, in fact it was more than a year ago, I stripped down to my underpants, took off my bra and jumped into that water and swam as far as the eye...
Ross, challenge.
Is it repetition of water? Body of water jumped into the
water. That's right, yes, indeed. Well, listen, Ross.
Nobody questions the bra, but the water is...
I know. That's the joy of just a minute. They like the images, but they want the repetition. Yes, so perhaps he'll always wear a bra. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's what they thought. Well, poor Merton, yes, he always got his bra on.
That's what they do say about me.
He might not have been wearing it. He might have been fishing with it.
No, didn't you see him before he came out to do the show? He was adjusting it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Ross, you got him with the correct challenge with only 3 seconds to go. The 7 Seas starting now.
I was under the 7 Seas in a Norwegian submarine when all of a
So Ross Noble speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now still in second place, 1 point behind Paul Merton, 1 point ahead of Clement Freud, and 4 or 5 ahead of Sean Locke. And that... He's done very well for the first time, I can assure you. And that is the situation as we go into the final round, alas. I think it was worth more than that. And the final round is very... It's a fine Scottish subject. It is the Scottish Parliament and Clement Freud. So will you take the subject and go with it, Clement? 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
If you look at a National Assembly with a Scottish Speaker, a Scottish Leader of the House, a Scottish Lord Chancellor, and a Scot in charge of the Exchequer, that would be the English Parliament. But the Scottish Parliament is peopled when the Scots arrived after the Norman Conquest. The Angles who were acute turned north and those obtuse remained in the south, as a consequence of which virtually all political bodies are peopled by those excellent gentlemen known as Scottish, and the Scottish Parliament is to be hugely welcomed and is very expensive and extremely beautiful.
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of extremely.
Yes, that's right. There were 2 extremists there. Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, there were all kinds of other things, but no, a dead challenge. I think they want the subject. The Scottish Parliament is with Paul Merton, and there are 10 seconds to go, starting now.
When the Picts arrived here, the local Scottish people were playing bagpipes and making kippers. They didn't have plates in them days. Oh, no. Nothing as fancy as crockery. What they used to do...
Paul Merton brought that round to an end with a flourish and also has brought the show to an end because we've no more time, alas. Just give you the final situation. Sean Locke, who's not played the game before, did extraordinarily well. Unfortunately finished in 4th place, but he was a great contributor. Great contributor. The other 3 were just ahead of him and very close. In 3rd place was Clement Freud, 1 behind Ross Noble only. And in 2nd place was Ross Noble, only 2 behind Paul Merton. So, Paul, we say, you're the winner this week. And it remains for me to say thank you to these 4 delightful, humorous and intrepid players of the game. That is Paul Merton, Ross Noble, Sean Locke and Clement Freud. I also thank Claire Bartlett, who's been helping me keep the score and blowing her whistle so elegantly. And we also thank our delightful producer-director, that is Claire Jones. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're more than indebted to this lovely audience here in Edinburgh at the Pleasance on the Fringe, who've cheered us on their way with panache and style. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from the panel, and from everybody else, goodbye till the next time we play Just a Minute.